Chapter 1874. As soon as Chenren said this, Wang Ling had no choice but to perk up and take a closer look at this youngster. If one didn't look carefully, this ancient version of Super Chin didn't seem very different from Super Chin. He had an exquisite buzz cut, regular facial features, dark skin, and just the right amount of muscles, as if he was synonymous with Super Chin. If one had to point out the difference, it would be the scar on the bridge of his nose and the fact that he was slightly taller than Super Chin. Ancient cultivators used heavenly materials and earthly treasures far more intensely than modern cultivators. Modern cultivators used heavenly materials and earthly treasures to refine pills that already had the standardized process of scientific cultivation, but ancient cultivators were different. They still used a more primitive method to refine elixirs, which was to throw the natural treasures they had collected into the furnace, and then leave it to fate. If they succeeded, the medicinal effects would be far more intense than those of modern cultivators, so ancient cultivators who had survived were much stronger than modern cultivators in terms of realm growth and development. Modern cultivators paid more attention to safety. Elixirs of the same standard wouldn't have any negative effects on the body, and the rest would be to use money to accumulate resources for cultivation. According to Zhang Zipei, there had been many ancient cultivators who had killed themselves by taking elixirs to achieve breakthroughs, and the number of them added up was enough to circle the earth several times. Chenren, I knew you'd be here too. While Wang Ling was staring at Chenren absent-mindedly, a loud voice rang out in the distance. A huge figure walked out of a palace hall and arrived at the entrance of East Great Emperor's main hall. This person was fat and had short hair. After greeting Chenren from afar, he helped up the chubby woman who was kowtowing on the ground like Chenren. Mother, it's useless for you to worship the emperor. I just don't want to cultivate. It's so nice to raise the spirit beast farm my family runs, the fat boy said. The chubby woman sighed. I know you don't like cultivation, so I didn't pray in that direction with East Great Emperor. I only hope that you can have more friends and connections. That way, at least you will have friends to take care of you in the future and you won't be bullied. We know you love raising spirit beasts, but you still have to cultivate. After all, your realm affects your lifespan. Your father and I don't want to see you die young. The chubby woman earnestly instructed him. In a trance, Wang Ling felt that this was an ill-fated relationship that couldn't be described in words. Even if he didn't believe it, the similarity between these two people and Super Chen's and Hero Gua's attributes was too high. Brother Guijia, I knew you'd come too. Like the modern cultivation world, these two had a very good relationship in the past, and Wang Ling felt as if he were a lifetime ago. If it wasn't for the fact that he knew that this was the ancient era, Wang Ling really would have thought that the people standing in front of him were Super Chen and Hero Gua themselves. I can't help it, because a lot of friends have come to pay their respects. Guijia, and as he laughed. As I say I Wang, he said, Chen as to say I, Ling as I ran in Ling. Yes, we grew up together. It would be too fake if we were still so polite. Chenren laughed. The two of them put their arms around each other's shoulders and hugged each other. Wang both, but as the two, they're both, they, and to both their parents, and both, the parents, and both. Wang Ling actually wanted to get to know these two people, since he would be able to further determine whether they were related to Super Chen and Hero Gua in the future. But he was worried that he would disrupt the course of history if he probed them, so he resisted the urge. In the end, Wang Ling hadn't expected East Great Emperor to actually walk over on his own. Wang Ying, do you know them? East Great Emperor shook his head. No, it's just that Senior seems to want to get to know them. Wang Ying, don't, it'll affect the course of history. East Great Emperor, small details don't matter, as long as the big picture doesn't change. For example, if there's a showdown between great emperors here later, it'll affect a lot of people. In that case, no matter what you do, it won't affect the course of history. Wang Ling, Wang Ying, Lotus Sun and the others instantly fell into a deep silence at these words, because they could hear the meaning in his words. In the course of history, if there was an irreversible disaster, it indeed wouldn't matter what you did before the disaster, because the disaster was unchangeable and everything after the disaster would be destroyed. This suddenly gave Wang Ling some misgivings, because he knew what had happened to all the ancient ones. Most of them had been locked up in the Supreme Corpse painting by Tao ancestor Wang in the end. If this point in time was a great disaster, then in theory, no matter what they did now, it didn't seem like it would change the course of history. But this was just Wang Ling's idea. At the moment, he wasn't particularly clear about the structure of the eternal world, so it was always right to play it safe. Furthermore, the fact that all the ancient ones had been locked up in the Supreme Corpse painting wasn't actually a natural disaster, but a man-made one. Since it was a man-made one, the probability of triggering it might not be 100%. So the answer Wang Ling pondered on this premise was that everything they were doing in the diary now might be a way to pave the way for Tao ancestor Wang to lock up the ancient ones in the Supreme Corpse painting. It was too complicated. At that moment, Wang Ling sighed in his heart. It wasn't easy to sort out all these things, so he could only take it one step at a time. Brother, please wait, I think I've seen you somewhere before. Just as East Great Emperor was walking in the direction of the East Great Hall, Guijie's voice suddenly rang out, and he narrowed his eyes at him. Oh, is that so? East Great Emperor smiled very kindly and warmly. You look very familiar. And judging from the style of your clothes, you should be from the East Territory, right? Only people from the East Territory are equipped with vermilion bird plume ornaments. I see that the vermilion bird embroidery on your robe is very exquisite. Your identity must be unusual. Guijie frowned and guessed. You know a lot. East Great Emperor agreed. Yes, I heard it from my friends. I don't have much, just a lot of friends. Guijie smiled. Senior, please don't laugh. He's just like that, always acting familiar. At that moment, Chenren stepped forward and cupped his fists respectfully. You're a polite child. East Great Emperor nodded in satisfaction. Senior's bearing is extraordinary, and there are other seniors at your side, so you must be a member of the royal family from the East Territory. At that moment, Chenren also voiced his opinion. Also, you must be a fan of East Great Emperor. East Great Emperor. Why do you think so? Isn't Senior's attire paying tribute to East Great Emperor? Does Senior dare say that he is East Great Emperor himself? Chenren couldn't stop laughing. Even if he is, that's too weird. Who would come to pay their respects, don't you think? East Great Emperor, Lotus Sun, Wang Ling, everyone else, Wang Ling realized. Sure enough, the Chen family was very dangerous. It had been very dangerous since ancient times. Chapter 1875. There was no need for Wang Ling to say more about the danger Chenren was in. East Great Emperor could sense it. It turned out that there really were people like this in this world who could unintentionally reveal the truth. The point was that they didn't have much awareness of what they were saying. This was too frightening. In some sense, this kind of talent had already surpassed that of the royal family, which was amazing. They didn't rely on the power of their bloodline at all, and were simply crushed by their talent. When it came to bloodlines, this was what East Great Emperor found most amazing. Senior Wang, these two people, especially the one called Chenren, do you know all of their descendants? East Great Emperor asked weakly in the team voice communication technique. There are indeed two descendants who look very much like them, and even have the same surname. But at the moment, I can't tell if the two people I know are their descendants. After a moment of silence, Wang Ying finally answered truthfully. This amazed East Great Emperor even more, and he was utterly shocked. These two people in front of him couldn't even be considered members of the royal family. At most, they were nobles in a territory, the kind of rich people who didn't have to worry about food and clothing, but their cultivation talents were inferior to the royal family. If Guijie and Chenren really were the ancestors of Hero Gua and Super Chen, it could be said that the luck of these two clans was simply heaven-defying. They clearly weren't ancient beings with royal blood, but they were able to leave behind descendants who could transcend time and reach the modern cultivation world. What kind of terrible luck did this clan have? Even many members of the royal family didn't have this kind of luck. After all, Tao ancestor Wang had gone crazy and locked up all the ancient beings. The emperor, the royal family, the rogue cultivators and ordinary people among the ancient beings. In the same world in the painting, he hadn't let a single one of them off. As for the rest, probably only a few tenths of a % of the population had survived, and it was definitely easier for those with royal blood to escape the devil's clutches. Since they were strong enough, they might have the means to pull the wool over everyone's eyes. Given that they weren't members of the royal family and didn't have enough strength, there were pitifully few ordinary people who could openly slip away. In Wang Ling's eyes, this probability of escaping was already no different from winning the lottery. All in all, this trip to the temple was a pleasant surprise for Wang Ling, and could also be considered a kind of scare. This feeling of meeting an old friend in a foreign land was incredibly magical. Then the question was, since Super Chen's and Hirogua's ancestors had appeared, would he also run into his immemorial self? Initially, they had come to the temple to wait for Madame Shan Xiu's appointment. He hadn't expected that instead of Madame Shan Xiu, they would trigger some strange plot. "Brother, you look very familiar. Do you want to exchange a spiritual mark?" Guijie, who was already very familiar with him, asked. He took out a piece of jade with an expectant look. The eternal world did not have such modern equipment, let alone the internet. Cultivators still used primitive methods to communicate with each other, such as leaving spiritual energy imprints. Every cultivator had their own special spiritual energy, so as long as they left a spiritual energy imprint on each other, they could communicate directly through the jade in the future, which was equivalent to adding a contact person. Of course. The East Great Emperor smiled and directly took out his jade stone. Zhang Ziqin was horrified. This wasn't an ordinary spiritual energy imprint. Since it had been given by the East Great Emperor, it was naturally his imprint. The East Great Emperor had actually given something that so many people yearned for but couldn't get. This time, Wang Ling completely understood that this East Great Emperor was someone who liked to stir up trouble and didn't mind causing trouble. After Guijie's exchange, Chenren next to him also did the same. In this way, Guijie and Chenren could be considered to have made a new friend. So far, they didn't know the real background of this friend, and could only vaguely sense that he was a member of the Eastern Territories royal family. "It's embarrassing to ask for a spiritual energy mark on our first meeting. How about we treat you to a meal, senior?" Hirogwa said to East Great Emperor as he looked at Chenren, and the two of them smiled at each other. "I'm afraid not. I'm waiting for someone. He wants to talk to me," East Great Emperor replied. Hirogwa was curious. "Mei Yunhai, Madame Shan Xiu's direct disciple. Madame Shan Xiu will also be here later," East Great Emperor said. "It's them." To East Great Emperor's surprise, this Guijie's network was broader than he had imagined, and he even knew Mei Yunhai and Madame Shan Xiu. "You know them?" "More than that, I'm very familiar with them," Guijie said. "I met Mei Yunhai when we went to the secret land together. Of course, it was mainly him who took me along, and I provided spirit beasts for support along the way. All kinds of spirit beasts for transportation, spirit beasts to assist in attacks, and spirit beasts to store food and so on." Spirit beasts to store food. Everyone blushed with shame when they heard this. So, he was so hungry that he directly ate spirit beasts as meat? That was too cruel. Guijie put his hands on his hips and said with the expression of a diviner, "And let me tell you, I even know why Mei Yunhai is looking for you." "Shouldn't it be Madame Shan Xiu looking for me? Why Mei Yunhai?" East Great Emperor asked. "Madame Shan Xiu is just here to keep watch, and was afraid that Senior wouldn't agree." Guijie replied, "Senior, you should know that Mei Yunhai is Madame Shan Xiu's only true disciple. But in fact, Mei Yunhai has a younger sister who isn't his biological sister. She and Mei Yunhai ran to become Madame Shan Xiu's true disciple, but unfortunately, Madame Shan Xiu didn't choose her." "Why are you telling my master this?" Zhang Zizi raised his eyebrows and asked. "I know that Senior is extraordinary, and is a member of the East Territories royal family. Since she is a member of the East Territories royal family, she must have a connection with East Great Emperor." Guijie said, "Senior, can't you see that Madame Shan Xiu's main purpose for looking for you is to send Mei Yunhai's younger sister to the East Territories Imperial Palace to cultivate everyone?" Hearing this, Wang Ling suddenly felt like he had been cheated. What happened to discussing the secrets of the Book of Nine Realms? Why was it suddenly about finding a partner for East Great Emperor's harem? This woman, Zhang Zizi's lips trembled and he was about to scream. At that moment, there was a commotion inside the temple. At the door, several familiar figures appeared, and because of their astonishing fame in the eternal world, they attracted the attention of the surrounding onlookers. It was Madame Shan Xiu, who had come with her true disciple, Mei Yunhai, and a young girl who looked natural and unrestrained. She was wearing a long aqua blue dress with a white silk chiffon over it. The pearl belt around her waist was particularly eye-catching, and her silky black hair hung down to her waist. Her crescent eyebrows and starry eyes made her look very beautiful, snow-white skin. The girl's steps were light and full of confidence, which gave Wang Ling a very familiar feeling. Then she walked up to East Great Emperor in 2 or 3 steps. Before Madame Shan Xiu and Mei Yunhai could introduce themselves, she smiled and introduced herself. "Hello, Senior. My name is Sun Fu, Mei Yunhai's adopted sister. An inner sect disciple of Immortal Mountain Sect." When this sweet voice rang in their ears, Wang Ling was dumbfounded. Wang Ling was stupefied, and so was Lotus Sunday. Chapter 1876. These days, there were many members of the royal family who wanted to send their children to the imperial palace to gain experience. However, this was the first time that the East Emperor had seen someone who was obviously not very familiar with the imperial palace. After this incident, even the East Emperor himself was a little confused because he found that the current direction of the script had deviated a little from the track. And this was something that he did not write in his diary. However, the East Emperor still chose to deal with it calmly. As he said before, as long as the major events did not change, these trivial matters would not affect the real process of history. Over the years, he had also approved many new people to enter the imperial palace to cultivate. In the eyes of others, it was a big matter, but in the eyes of the East Emperor, it was really just a trivial matter. The East Emperor did not want to expose his identity, so he respectfully bowed to Madame Shan Xiu in front of him. "Greetings, madam." "You don't have to be so polite, sir. It is not convenient to talk here. There is a spring orchid house next to the temple. I think it is more suitable to talk there." Madame Shan Xiu narrowed her eyes and revealed a kind smile. The two faced each other and communicated through the team telepathy technique. "So, madam, you led me here just to confirm whether I am related to the East Emperor?" The East Emperor laughed. "Indeed, there is a reason." Madame Shan Xiu nodded slightly. The Central Region Temple worshipped 4 emperors at the same time. Under normal circumstances, after entering the temple, the believers would directly walk to the palace of the great emperor they believed in. Madame Shan Xiu also probed the identity of the East Emperor. "Sorry, madam, I can't help you with this matter." However, to Madame Shan Xiu's surprise, the East Emperor politely bowed and quickly declined her invitation. "As far as I know, this year's imperial palace of the East Emperor has already been selected. Moreover, the East Emperor Palace has just experienced a war, and many of the palaces have been destroyed. It can be said that there are many things to do. So before it is completely restored, there will be no new plans to accept new people." He chose to directly refuse, and the reason was almost watertight, leaving Madame Shan Xiu speechless for a while. From the East Great Emperor's point of view, a direct rejection was the best way to avoid any trouble. Moreover, it was impossible for him to leave under such circumstances, because his purpose of coming to the temple was actually to wait for the flustered and exasperated King Tiankuan to appear. As for inquiring about the secret of the Book of 9 Realms, it was just a matter of convenience. It was just that the East Great Emperor did not expect that Madame Shan Xiu would actually use this secret as bait to lure him to the temple to test him. Her actions had already caused the Great East Emperor to be extremely dissatisfied. Thus, even without the aforementioned excuses, he would not have accepted this lady called Sun Fu. Although he had already rejected Madame Shan Xiu's offer, the East Great Emperor still tried his best to speak to Sun Fu in a calm tone. "This young lady is extraordinarily talented. I think she will be in high demand wherever she goes. You don't have to choose the East Imperial Palace. Now that the East Imperial Palace is in chaos, perhaps it is better for you to find another path." The Great East Emperor wasn't being courteous when he said that he was extremely talented. Sun Fu's cultivation talent was indeed very good. At such a young age she had already reached the divine transformation stage, which was very rare. If she could be cultivated with more resources, it would not be difficult for her to enter the ancestor realm in the future. Moreover, the East Great Emperor could see that Sun Fu had suffered a lot. Although she was young, she was a ruthless character. There was a faint aura of thunder on her body, which proved that she had just resisted the heavenly tribulation not long ago. Moreover, without the assistance of outsiders, she had resisted the heavenly tribulation with her own strength. This was not something that ordinary people could do with their courage. However, after listening to the East Great Emperor's words, Sun Fu's willowy eyebrows slightly furrowed. It was obvious that she was a little surprised by such a refusal. She was not chosen by Madame Shan Xiu as a true disciple not because her talent was inferior to Mei Yunhai's. It was because Madame Shan Xiu felt that with her talent, it would be a waste to stay in the Immortal Mountain sect. It would be better to be sent to the Imperial Palace with the other royal children to gain experience. She originally thought that an outstanding young lady like herself would not be rejected if she could find a way to enter the Imperial Palace. But the man in front of her didn't have the slightest interest in her at all. On one hand, he said that she was a fragrant cake that everyone would fight over, but on the other hand, he refused her invitation and told her to find another way out. Sun Fu felt that this was completely illogical. "Senior, are you testing my sincerity?" After thinking for a while, Sun Fu came up with an answer, and she said telepathically to the East Great Emperor, "I understand. It's not easy to join the Imperial Palace. If you're not careful, you might sneak into other big region spies." East Great Emperor, Wang Ling, Lotus Sun, "But senior, please rest assured, I'm not that kind of person. I grew up without parents. It was Brother Yunhai who picked me up and brought me back to the Immortal Mountain sect to cultivate under Madame Shan Xiu. Given Madame's reputation in the cultivation world, senior should at least give me this little bit of trust, right?" Sun Fu bowed again and said respectfully, "No matter what senior thinks of me, it is my wish to join the East Imperial Palace. I am only willing to join the East Imperial Palace. There are many things waiting to be done in the East Imperial Palace, and we need manpower. My daughter, Sun Fu, can definitely help." Hearing this, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were stunned. This time, they couldn't explain at all what was going on with this identical ability to fill in the blanks. This was simply a modern Lotus Sun's eternal replica. East Great Emperor sighed deeply when he heard this. He hadn't expected Sun Fu to be so determined. It would be very difficult to drive her away now. But as long as it didn't affect the overall situation, East Great Emperor thought that it wouldn't hurt to keep her here. Very quickly, East Great Emperor changed his mind. He looked at Madame Shan Xiu, Mei Yunhai and Sun Fu and said, "How about this, madam? This Miss Sun Fu can stay with me for the time being. I can also take her to the East Imperial Palace to see the Emperor for a recommendation. But I still have important matters to attend to in the Central Territory, so I won't make a move so quickly. During this period of time, if Miss Sun Fu can behave herself and not cause trouble for me, then I'm still willing to help her." Madame Shan Xiu immediately beamed with joy. "Then I'll have to trouble you, sir. Of course, since you can help Fu lead the way, I will naturally be grateful to you. I believe that you are also very curious about the secret of the Book of 9 Realms." East Great Emperor's eyes lit up at this. He hadn't expected Madame Shan Xiu to actually know something and wasn't deceiving him. Just as he was about to ask, Madame Shan Xiu, who was holding her walking stick, suddenly turned her ear as if she had sensed danger and focused her attention somewhere in the air. Madame Shan Xiu smiled. "But it seems that I can only tell you about this after you've resolved the trouble in front of you." It was a powerful and awe-inspiring killing intent that swept across the sky with an insufferably mighty and domineering air. "Old thief from Room 1. How dare you steal this king's Book of 9 Realms? This king is coming for you." Before he arrived, his voice had already arrived. Then this overwhelming pressure suddenly descended. With the entire temple as the center, the ground immediately shook violently. No one had expected this King Tiankuan to be so overbearing as to directly seek revenge in front of the statues of the 4 emperors in this temple of the central region. Chapter 1877. On the central trade planet, King Tianquan was actually very powerful. Just his might alone caused black clouds to cover the sky above the temple. A mysterious power completely covered the entire sky above the temple, and not a single ray of light could penetrate through. As for the two snake women who followed him earlier, they were very far away, as if they were afraid that they would be implicated. Not only did they hide far away, but they also set up several layers of spiritual shields around themselves. They didn't participate in the battle, but just incited King Tianquan to attack from the rear. Go, King! Get rid of the villain in Room 1. Take back the Book of 9 Realms. There's a statue of the Great West Emperor in the temple, and he's watching it. When Snake Woman number 2 heard this, she also egged him on. Your Highness, hurry up. These people are mediocre, and they definitely can't beat you. You've been on the battlefield for a long time, so how can you be afraid of them? King Tianquan sneered. He stood proudly in the void, full of vigor, as if he didn't care about the people below him. At this moment, the believers in the temple were either fleeing or scattering. King Tianquan watched them flee in all directions, and he didn't stop them. His target was very obvious. He was targeting the Great East Emperor's group. As for the other believers in the temple, they weren't his target, and he wasn't interested in them. However, this was the central trade planet, and very few people dared to directly attack here. As the Alliance army, the Central Galaxy's ancient city guards couldn't just stand by and watch. Immediately, dozens of guards appeared on the other side of the sky on their spiritual swords like meteors. When they saw that the person standing there was King Tianquan, the expressions on everyone's faces changed. This was the representative of the Great Western Emperor, and his battle prowess was extraordinary. Now that he had chosen to fight here, the guards of the ancient city instantly became very passive. King, this is not the place to attack. A captain of the ancient city guards stood up and talked to King Tianquan with a head full of cold sweat. He was under a lot of pressure, and his heart trembled. This King Tianquan was indeed the representative of the Great West Emperor, a big shot who had been on the battlefield for a long time. Just by standing in front of him, he could feel the terrifying pressure. Seeing King Tianquan remain silent, his Adam's apple involuntarily rolled, and then he said, "If King Tianquan can use the core world to fight, we will leave immediately." This was the ancient city guards' way of advancing by retreating. It was their duty to mediate the conflicts and wars in the Central Galaxy. However, the person they were facing was King Tianquan, an extremely troublesome character. The ancient city guards knew that they were powerless to stop him, so they could only take a step back and hope that King Tianquan could use his inner world to fight. However, King Tianquan couldn't care less about this. He didn't care about these ancient city guards at all. Then wouldn't my inner world be a mess? This king will fight here. Don't worry, I won't cause any trouble for you. This king knows his limits and won't cause too much damage to this place. When the guards of the ancient city heard this, they couldn't help but look at each other. They wanted to say something but hesitated. Even with King Tianquan's guarantee, most of them were still extremely hesitant. A battle between deity transformation realm experts was a weapon of destruction, let alone a progenitor like King Tianquan. If a progenitor went all out, then it wouldn't just be an apocalyptic battle. Instead, it would be a proper planetary war. It doesn't matter, everyone. Since King Tianquan wants to fight with me, I naturally have no reason to refuse. Don't worry, I won't let King Tianquan wreak havoc here. At this moment, the Great East Emperor smiled kindly and said, "If it is damaged with the divine elephant of the Great West Emperor here, you can ask the Great West Emperor for the cost of the repair. I believe that the Great West Emperor is wise and will never renege on the debt." At this moment, a powerful surge of spiritual energy rushed out from the East Emperor's body like a flame. This was just the most common fire elemental spell, not the vermilion bird divine ability, but it was already so terrifying. This was because the East Emperor didn't want to directly reveal his true identity, so he deliberately hid it. He was currently playing the role of a member of the royal family from the East Domain. Therefore, it wasn't strange for him to have a fire element spell on him. King Tianquan had already noticed that the guest in room 1 wasn't an ordinary person, but the intensity of this spirit power still made his eyes twitch slightly. The moment their auras collided, the scene immediately became irreconcilable. The ancient city guards in the sky couldn't withstand this collision of auras at all, and were extremely embarrassed to be caught in the middle. They had no choice but to descend from the sky and take charge of dispersing the crowd and building a barrier. Madame Shan Xiu, it's very dangerous here. An ancient city guard approached Madame Shan Xiu and tried to take her away. However, Madame Shan Xiu just smiled slightly. It's fine, I'm here. She then looked at Sun Fu, Chen Ren and Guijie next to her. These 3 juniors will also be under my protection. Nothing will happen to them. Drive away the other independent cultivators first. Their safety is more important. Madame Shan Xiu's expression was unexpectedly calm and composed, and Lotus Sun, Zhang Zipei and Wang Zhen were all a little dazed by her. They were certain that Madame Shan Xiu wasn't from the modern era, but her calm attitude, as if she already knew Wang Ling's identity, made them feel very puzzled. Boom! King Tiankuan pressed his palm forward, and the sound of the great Dao instantly boomed. He moved extremely quickly like a flood dragon exploring the sea, and the blazing light it produced shattered the surrounding space. Dark purple lightning flashed in an incomparably terrifying manner. This was the Western region's romance of the dragon and snake, divine power, which King Tiankuan had already cultivated to the 10th level. His palm moved at a terrifying speed, like a snake, a dragon, and a flood dragon, twisting together in an earth-shattering manner. Together with the blazing light emitted by East Great Emperor, it formed a dazzling yin and yang pattern. One yin and one yang, one was like a demon god descending to the world, and the other was like a golden crow flying in the sky. Hiding in East Great Emperor's body, Wang Ling secretly observed everything. He hadn't directly assisted East Great Emperor in his attack, and everything he was seeing now was East Great Emperor's own strength. It could only be said that East Great Emperor was indeed an expert with the bearing of a great emperor. He just stood where he was with his hands behind his back, and was unusually steady. Just as the great East Emperor had said before, he was only facing a duke. How could a mere duke make him, a great emperor, feel fear? So, standing where he was, he just wrapped his palm in fire, then clenched his fist and punched out at King Tiankuan in front of him. Boom! A huge and blazing light burst forth from East Great Emperor's fist and shot straight at King Tiankuan's body like a fire dragon. East Great Emperor's blow could be said to be unstoppable. After it exploded with astonishing power, it shot into the sky and formed an astonishing pillar of fire that the naked eye couldn't see. What happened next was completely out of everyone's expectations. Everyone, including the East Great Emperor himself, was astonished, because East Great Emperor hadn't expected this at all. His punch, to actually directly kill King Tiankuan, and this wasn't written in the diary at all. Chapter 1878. With just one punch, King Tiankuan had been directly reduced to ashes. East Great Emperor was instantly stupefied. This wasn't what he wanted to see, because it wasn't part of the diary's plot at all. According to the diary's plot, he would have only severely injured King Tiankuan and wouldn't have been reduced to ashes like this. What's going on? Why did he just die? Wang Ying asked, but his expression was just as calm as Wang Ling's. Coincidentally, both of them felt that things were getting interesting. Wang Ling had initially thought that since this journey of eternity had been planned, there would definitely be some hiccups, and it wouldn't go as smoothly as the diary had planned. At first, he had thought that East Great Emperor was in cahoots with the person who had instructed him to write the diary, so he had hidden the truth and refused to reveal his identity. But looking at the current outcome, it was clear that East Great Emperor had no idea that the diary's plot had been changed, and was even a little stupefied. No, I didn't want to kill him at all. Senior Wang didn't help me. The strength of my punch just now shouldn't have been enough to kill him at all. In the party voice chat, the East Great the Arch was also in disbelief. From the looks of it, it's very likely that we were all set up together, Lotus Sun added at this moment. According to the original diary's plot, King Tiankuan had only been severely injured, and even West Great Emperor had only suffered a loss in silence. After all, this was a central region galaxy, a place with strict order. King Tiankuan had directly used the method of killing and robbing, and then he had been severely injured by the East Great the Arch. No matter where you looked at it, the East Great the Arch was in the right. But now that King Tiankuan was dead, it wasn't just an ordinary conflict, but a diplomatic issue between the two territories. The person who had died was King Tiankuan, the most famous lord in the Western Territory. He was also the great general who guarded the Western Territory. He was the representative of West Great Emperor, and his overall strength was second only to West Great Emperor. But such a person had been killed with one punch. This was something that no one had expected. At that moment, the streets of the ancient city began to be filled with commotion. This was because King Heavenly Kuan had suddenly disappeared under that punch. No one had realized that King Heavenly Kuan had been killed. They felt that King Heavenly Kuan had used some sort of method to escape. For a moment, many people were discussing. Only the East Great Sovereign's side clearly knew that King Tiankuan had died a thorough death. Not even his ashes were left behind. Just as they were at a loss as to what to do, the two serpent woman attendants who had been following King Tiankuan suddenly walked over. The two snake women acted as if they were facing a great enemy. Snake woman number 1 stared at the great East Emperor and said, You actually used such a despicable method. If it wasn't for my prince's quick escape, I'm afraid he would have been severely injured by your hands. East Great Emperor, seeing this, Snake Woman number 2 quickly echoed, Yeah, just you wait. Once my Wang Ye regains his strength, he will definitely find you for revenge. The two of them cursed loudly, as if they were afraid that the people around them wouldn't be able to hear them. It wasn't until then that the people around them understood the truth of the matter. Oh, it turned out that this King Heavenly Kuan had slipped away. He even said that he was the representative of the Great West Emperor. He had started a fight, but in the end he had run away. How cowardly! For a moment, many people on the street were talking about this. For a moment, the area around the temple became very chaotic. Helpless, everyone could only find a place to hold a meeting and then come up with a plan. The historical trajectory in the diary had now been disrupted. King Heavenly Kuan's death was a key plot point, and no one knew what would happen next. As for those two snake women, who were singing the same tune as if they were performing a crosstalk, Wang Ling was basically convinced that these two snake women were on their side. Otherwise, they would never have instigated a war between King Heavenly King and the East Great Emperor. Another very important point was that they had actually helped the East Great Emperor to temporarily smooth things over. If it hadn't been for these two snake women, perhaps everyone would have known that something had happened to King Heavenly Kuan. But both Wang Ling and the East Great Emperor were well aware that this was just a stopgap measure. After all, the fight had taken place in front of the temple and in front of the divine elephants of the other 3 great emperors. Sooner or later, the truth couldn't be wrapped up, and it was only a matter of time before it was discovered. Madame Shan Xiu had mentioned Chunlan House earlier, so the East Great Emperor had immediately asked Zhang Zizi to steal money to reserve the entire building. The East Great Emperor, Wang Ling, Wang Ying, the Holy Girl of Holy Stone Sect, Wang Zhen, and the Jiaoyang Goddess, Lotus Sun, who had already changed her name to Xia Xinyan, sat in a private room. On the other side, Li Ren, Zhang Zizi, sat in another private room with the Wanggu Trio, Chen Ren, Guijie, Sun Fu, and Madame Shan Xiu. As for Mei Yunhai, he had been used as a tool to guard the door of the restaurant. After waiting for a while, Wang Ling's powerful spiritual senses quickly picked up news of the two snake women under King Heavenly Kuan. He had already informed Mei Yunhai, so when he saw the two snake women arrive, Mei Yunhai didn't stop them and directly let them in. After the two entered, they immediately headed for the East Great Emperor's house. The expressions on their faces were very nervous and perturbed, as if they had mustered up a lot of courage to come here. "Excuse me, you are?" One of the snake women opened her mouth and straightforwardly confirmed Wang Ling's identity. It was very obvious that these two snake women had received the secret signal that Wang Ling had sent out at the auction house by auctioning off that non-existent divine beast hair. But before snake woman number 1 could speak, Wang Ying immediately interjected, "That's right, I am Wang Ying." After saying this, the two snake women looked at each other. They were very quick-witted, and when they saw Wang Ying directly interject, they immediately understood that Wang Ling and Wang Ying were probably in the same body, and he was definitely still hiding his identity. Wang Ying had come forward because he didn't want to be exposed. Sure enough, it's you, Senior Wang. After understanding everything, Snake Woman number 1 immediately sighed with emotion, and then revealed her identity. I am Lu Qingyi. Because they had already completely broken away from history, there was no harm in directly revealing their identities without using the team telepathy spell. She then turned her gaze to Xia Xinyan with a gentle expression. This should be my good disciple, Rong Rong, right? Hearing this, Lotus Sun immediately burst out laughing. Shifu, how did you know? In any case, I was your cheap Shifu. Your little eyes are too easy to read. Saying this, Lu Qingyi, who was playing Snake Woman number 1, turned her gaze to the Holy Stone Church Holy Girl. Just as everyone thought that Lu Qingyi would guess Wang Zhen's identity, to everyone's surprise, Lu Qingyi directly raised her hand and slapped him. But there was a crisp sound, and Wang Zhen was a little dazed. What are you doing? With tears in her eyes, Lu Qingyi instantly went over and hugged him. Idiot! Do you know how worried I was about you? Wang Zhen was dazed, and just as he was about to hug Lu Qingyi, blood started to ooze from the corner of his mouth. Lu Qingyi was startled. What's going on? I just lightly slapped him. East Great Emperor swallowed the dog food in his mouth, then wiped the sweat off his cheeks. This brother Wang Zhen, the body he's attached to is already pregnant. Miss Lu's palm strike just now should have affected his fetus. Lu Qingyi. Chapter 1879. Faced with the female version of Wang Zhen who was pregnant with Tuanzi, Lu Qingyi's expression was extremely complicated. Although having a child had been part of her and Wang Zhen's plans after they fell in love, she hadn't expected it to be so early. Furthermore, the one who was pregnant wasn't her, but Wang Zhen himself. The most important thing now is to find a way to go back. Otherwise, if I stay here for too long, I'll really have to give birth. Wang Zhen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He took a few deep breaths to stabilize the baby, but the mask of pain on his face was still very obvious. He had a feeling that something would happen to this child soon. If that really happened, it wouldn't be a joke. Wang Zhen couldn't imagine that a man like him would have to experience the pain of childbirth. According to the original diary trajectory, as long as the 4 emperors' assembly was successfully completed, they would be able to directly return to the modern world. But now that the diary trajectory had been disrupted, the original ending of the 4 emperors' assembly would also change, and many other complicated trajectories might even emerge. Even if the 4 emperors' assembly went on smoothly, whether they could go back after completing their mission would be a problem. It was precisely because of this child in his belly that Wang Zhen had been focusing almost all his attention on it these days, and had no time to think about anything else. No matter how beautiful this holy girl of Holy Stone Church was, Wang Zhen wasn't in the mood to admire her at all, let alone have any lewd thoughts about this body. Of course, this was also thanks to Lu Qingyi's strict discipline. Although the two of them had transmigrated into different people's bodies, they still knew each other very well. At the same time, Lu Qingyi had full trust in Wang Zhen and felt that he would never do anything to let her down. Ah, that's great. Lotus Sun couldn't help but feel envious, even though she knew very well that this wasn't the time to be envious. As Wang Ling had expected, these 2 snake women were on their side, and had both transmigrated from the modern world. Snake Woman number 1, Lu Qingyi, had already revealed her identity, but at that moment, Snake Woman number 2 suddenly laughed and looked at Lotus Sunday. Since you've guessed Sister Qingyi's identity, can you guess mine? Lotus Sun replied with a smile, you're Taoist priest Yu Yueqing, right? Seeing that her identity had been revealed, Yu Yueqing looked like she was asking for trouble. Ah, I clearly haven't known you for long, so how do you know me so well? You were able to guess my identity immediately. Lotus Sun smiled. Taoist Yu has an elegant temperament. Even if you enter this snake woman's body, this aspect won't change easily, right? Of course, the most important thing is, Taoist priest Yu, can you put down the feather duster in your hand? Yu Yueqing smiled awkwardly. She didn't expect the feather duster in her hand to betray her. She had the habit of shaking off the dust when she was thinking about things. This was also an occupational disease that she had developed over the years as a Taoist. However, in order to not expose her identity as the Lamia, she had to endure these days. But now that the trajectory of the script was completely messed up, she could finally release her nature. However, he couldn't find a suitable flying duster for the time being, so he could only use the feather duster he found in the restaurant as a replacement. It was this habitual movement that Lotus Sun sensed something was off. Then, Wang Ying quickly summarized the current situation to Lu Qingyi and Yu Yueqing telepathically. At this point, everyone fell into deep thought again. Getting down to business, the East Great Emperor sighed. I didn't expect things to turn out like this. According to the previous script, King Tianquan shouldn't have been killed by me. There's clearly a third party involved. Lu Qingyi analyzed and looked at the East Great Emperor. And I think that if Senior really isn't hiding anything from us, there's only one possibility left. Now that things have come to this emperor indeed has nothing to hide. Senior Wang is in my body, and he witnesses everything. This emperor is counting on Senior Wang to show off for me at the Four Emperors Assembly. Who would have thought something like this would happen? The East Great Emperor was very anxious, and didn't seem to be hiding anything at all. Then it's actually very obvious that there's a third party who also knows about this diary. Furthermore, they intend to deliberately destroy the trajectory of the diary to achieve their own ulterior motives. At that moment, Lu Qingyi stared straight at the East Great Emperor. Senior, I'll ask you again. Are you sure you're not lying? Do you really not know anything about this mysterious senior one? The East Great Emperor felt a little awkward when he looked at Lu Qingyi like this. She was clearly a girl with a much lower realm than him, but for some reason, the East Great Emperor felt like he was shorter than Lu Qingyi. This was a powerful interrogation technique with the gaze, and Wang Zhen had the most right to speak about it. Ever since Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi got together, Lu Qingyi had been particularly strict with Wang Zhen's interactions with other members of the opposite sex, and would often use this kind of gaze to interrogate him. Thus, it was useless to lie under Lu Qingyi's gaze. Lu Qingyi would keenly pick up on the slightest hint of something amiss. Thus, after Lu Qingyi stared into the East Great Emperor's eyes for a few minutes, she suddenly withdrew her gaze and rubbed her chin doubtfully. From what I can see, the East Great Emperor isn't lying. He really doesn't know anything about the unexpected situation that's happening, or about this mysterious senior one. So first of all, we have to figure out what this third party is planning by disrupting the diary's original trajectory. At that moment, Wang Ying's voice sounded. Borrowing the East Great Emperor's body, he snapped his fingers, and a circle of light suddenly appeared in the air in front of him. Inside the circle was the scene of Zhang Ziden talking to Madame Shanxiu and the others in another room. At that moment, Zhang Ziden and Madame Shanxiu were testing each other out, and they happened to ask about the key topic of the Book of Nine Realms. Madame said that as a reward for my master, she would reveal a secret about the Book of Nine Realms. Zhang Ziden asked. Madame said that as a reward for my master, she would reveal a secret about the Book of Nine Realms. This Madame's words naturally count. Yes, Madame. Madame Shanxiu smiled amiably, and then gave Sun Fu a look. Fu, take it out. Yes, Madame. Sun Fu nodded obediently, and then took out a familiar scroll from a storage ring. This is... Zhang Ziden and the others in the other room were instantly stunned. It's as you can see. Madame Shanxiu narrowed her eyes and said mysteriously, this is the other Book of Nine Realms. It's indeed an authentic copy from Dao Ancestor Wang. Then the one we got, it's also authentic, Madame Shanxiu said. There were originally two books of Nine Realms. One was the Yang Scroll, and the other was the Yin Scroll. Chapter 1880. There were actually two books of Nine Realms in this cultivation world at the same time, whether it was Zhang Zipei who was watching from the front, or Wang Ling and the others who were watching from the next room, they were all slightly stunned. Dao Ancestor Wang designed two books at the beginning? Zhang Zipei asked. There was indeed only one book at the beginning. Madame Shanxiu frowned and said, Do you remember the Life and All Things bowl that was sold at the beginning of the auction? It's a chaos magic treasure that can replicate any object. So it's that bowl? No, that bowl isn't that strong. It's one thing to replicate elixirs and talismans, but how can it replicate the Book of Nine Realms as well? Zhang Zipei was puzzled. It's a magic treasure that has the same function as that bowl. As far as I know, this magic treasure should be an object from the Outer God Palace, and has something to do with the old world. Her words once again stunned everyone present. Perhaps not many modern cultivators knew or came into contact with the matters of the old world, but among the ancient cultivators, this was a common topic. Humans were creatures full of curiosity. They would never stop exploring and tracing back to past civilizations. It was a never-ending cycle. In the heyday of the old world, the rulers of the old world led by the outer gods would certainly trace the origin of the universe. Although they were a magnificent race in the history of the universe, Wang Ling was certain that they absolutely weren't the origin of the universe. In the vast universe, there were all kinds of mysterious species. The old world, the world of the dragon clan, and the world of cultivators created by humans were nothing more than a drop in the ocean of the vast universe. Madam, is the Book of Nine Realms the Yin Scroll or the Yang Scroll? Zhang Zipei was a little stupefied as he opened his eyes and asked. It's the Yin Scroll. Madame Shan Xiu said, if you sense it carefully with your spiritual senses, you should be able to sense that it's surrounded by some extraordinary energy that doesn't belong to cultivators. But I still don't understand why that person attacked King Tiankuan. Zhang Zipei frowned. Because the Yin Scroll of the Book of Nine Realms originally belonged to King Tiankuan. Ah. Also, King Tiankuan entrusted that master thief called Zhang Zipei to give it to me. Ah? What's wrong, brother? Why are you so surprised? Zhang Zizi wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and tried to regain his composure. At the same time, he began to recall the events that had happened a long time ago. He vaguely seemed to remember this matter, but if Madame Shan Xiu did not mention it at this moment, he was afraid that he would never remember it in his lifetime. Do you still remember when Zhang Zi stole the mixed immortal stone in front of everyone at the auction? That was when King Tiankuan's commission began. Madame Shan Xiu said, therefore, the Chaos Immortal Stone is just a bait. King Tiankuan had planned to hand it over from the start, as it was a reward for Zhang Zidua. And their real purpose is to transfer the Yin volume of the Book of the Nine Realms to me. At this point, the surrounding people were all stunned. No one would have thought that the truth would be like this. On the surface, King Tiankin had attended the auction in such a dignified manner, guarded the Chaos Immortal Stone, and threatened to capture Zhang Zipei. All of this had been done in order to move the Book of Nine Realms out. At this moment, Chen Rin could not help but speak up. So, King Tiankuan's real purpose is to ask Madame to protect the Yin volume of the Book of the Nine Realms, and he also knows that he has been targeted from the beginning? Madame Shan Xiu seemed a little surprised by Chen Ren's accurate guess. After a moment of daze, she nodded. Brother Chen Ren is right. But why did he fight with the gentleman in room 1 for the Yang volume at the auction? Sun Fu asked. Because under normal circumstances, it is impossible for a copied item to surpass the original. But because this Yin volume is enhanced by the power of the great old world, it is surrounded by a mysterious force. This way, the situation is different from what we imagined. Madame Shan Xiu explained in detail. Compared to the Yang volume, the Yin volume has a more terrifying power. Not only can you inherit Dao ancestor Wang's legacy, but you can also obtain the power of the great old world. According to what this old woman knows, this copy of the Yin scroll has no restrictions. No matter who opens it, they can see the words inside. Could this be the great old world's recovery plan? Zhang Zi made a bold guess. That's right. This recovery plan is very dangerous. King Tiankuan clearly guessed this, which is why he started to set it up. Madame Shan Xiu said, in the end, this Yin scroll is only a copy. As long as King Tiankuan can successfully obtain the Yang scroll, he can offset part of the Yin scroll's power and then gather his strength to destroy it. Unfortunately, he didn't bid for your master. So he had no choice but to change his plan and forcibly seize the Yang volume. He did not expect to be ambushed by a third party in the process. So his death has nothing to do with my master? It's not completely unrelated. But this matter cannot be blamed on you. After all, it looks like King Tiankuan intends to digest this matter on his own. I came to this conclusion based on some of the clues and evidence I currently have. Madame Shan Xiu sighed and said, "Don't you find it strange that King Tiankuan didn't leave anything behind the moment he turned into ashes?" "It is indeed very strange." Zhang Zi nodded. "A normal cultivator's death wouldn't have been so clean. King Tiankuan evaporated in an instant and disappeared without a trace. This method is very heaven-defying. Because the moment the third party got rid of him, they also took away all his storage magic treasures. From the very beginning, they were after the volume of the Book of 9 Realms. After listening to the entire inference, everyone couldn't help but have mixed feelings in their hearts. Although Madame Shan Xiu had only come to this conclusion based on the clues they currently had, with her status in the cultivation world, the credibility of her words was very high. This was a very reasonable conclusion and also explained a lot of things that he hadn't been able to figure out before. So the question now was, who on earth was this third party? In fact, at that moment, he vaguely had the answer in his heart. "Madam, since you've said so much, you should know a little about this third party, right?" Zhang Zi asked solemnly at that moment. "It's just a guess, I can't be sure." Madame Shan Xiu shook her head slightly and said, "This person's power is spread throughout the Central Territory and the 4 major territories. He's a new force that has flourished in the last 100 years, and has made a lot of money from the war between the Eastern and Western territories. He has a very solid foundation. Could it be?" Zhang Zi suddenly thought of something. "Yes, this force's surname is Peng." The error-free chapters of the daily life of the Immortal King will continue to be updated on the new C-Book Pavilion. There are no advertisements on the site, so please bookmark and recommend the new C-Book Pavilion. If you like the daily life of the Immortal King, please bookmark. The daily life of the Immortal King is updated the fastest in the C-Book Pavilion. Chapter 1881. It could be said that Madame Shan Xiu's words explained a lot of things that he hadn't been able to understand before. For example, given Dao ancestor Wang's prestigious status in the cultivation world, why had he chosen a rebellious person like Peng Shiren as his disciple? After all, talent wasn't the only thing that mattered when it came to choosing a disciple. Morality and character were equally important. Looking at it all now, Peng Shiren was nothing more than a usurper who claimed to be Dao ancestor Wang's disciple. Because of Wang Ling's promise, Dao ancestor Wang had no choice but to accept him and pass on his legacy to him. I didn't expect things to turn out like this. Even East Great Emperor was surprised when he heard this. It wasn't that the 4 emperors hadn't paid attention to the Peng family, which had risen to prominence in the last 100 years, but they hadn't expected them to actually have such an idea. "Seniors, I suddenly thought of a possibility," Lotus Sun suddenly said at that moment, her expression extremely solemn. "Miss Sun, please speak." East Great Emperor nodded and looked like he was all ears. "I'm thinking, what if King Tiankuan's death and Peng Shiren's subsequent fight for the Book of 9 Realms are actually part of the historical trajectory?" It had to be said that Lotus Sun's very bold idea shocked everyone present, and they looked at each other in dismay. East Great Emperor asked, Are you saying that it's still part of the historical trajectory?" Lotus Sun nodded obediently, then analyzed the situation unhurriedly. "I think that the progress of the diary, including East Great Emperors, is actually the first time we've experienced it. Although it says what will happen later, it's true that things haven't developed according to what's written in the diary, and it seems like we've already deviated from the historical trajectory. But if all of this was planned by the senior who wrote the diary, that's a different story. Since that senior has the ability to write this diary that transcends timelines, then he definitely has the power to influence the development of the timeline. If he has already calculated King Tiankuan's death, then he will definitely be able to control the trajectory of events. If he has already calculated King Tiankuan's death and Peng Shiren's obtaining of the Book of 9 Realms, then everything else actually makes sense. As for what I said above, there's actually evidence to back it up. After all, Peng Shiren did indeed inherit Dao ancestor Wang's legacy in the modern cultivation society. This legacy is very pure, and clearly wasn't given to him by the Yin scroll of the Book of Nine Realms. Everyone was stunned by her words. Wang Zhen thought it over carefully and felt that there was some truth to her words. Actually, Rong's words are quite logical. Also, why do I feel that rather than saying that the person who is clearly arranged is the dead King Tiankuan, it's better to say that it's this Peng Shiren? Lu Qingyi quickly nodded in agreement with Wang Zhen's opinion. That makes sense. After all, in the timeline of the modern cultivation society, even if Peng Shiren inherited Dao ancestor Wang's orthodoxy, he would still be beaten up by Senior Wang, wouldn't he? That is to say, this orthodoxy was probably inherited by him on purpose in our timeline. Wang Ling and Wang Ying, so that was how it was. At that moment, Wang Ling couldn't help thinking that Lotus Sun was a genius. He had only wanted to find the mastermind behind the mysterious text, but he had neglected this layer of logical connection. That was right, this Peng Shiren had already inherited his orthodoxy in the modern cultivation society. Even if he had inherited Dao ancestor Wang's orthodoxy, it wasn't as strong as Wang Ling had imagined. Orthodoxy was a good thing. It could greatly increase a cultivator's cultivation in a short period of time, which was the equivalent of a grandmaster giving a meal to eat. But orthodoxy also had its limits. Because if Peng Shiren had talent that surpassed Dao ancestor Wang's, inheriting Dao ancestor Wang's orthodoxy would instead be a shackle for him. And this point was actually proven right now. Because Peng Shiren wasn't interested in the orthodox Book of Nine Realms, he was instead more interested in the Yin scroll replica. After all, the Yin scroll contained the power of the old world, which could double his strength and give him infinite possibilities. After analyzing the situation at this point, it seemed that the current situation was already infinitely clear. Faced with a script that had completely deviated from the diary's trajectory, Wang Ling finally knew how to put a full stop to this plot from the eternal world. It looks like we still have to wait for the Four Emperors' assembly tomorrow. At that moment, Wang Ying looked around and said, "It's impossible that Great West Emperor doesn't know about King Tiankuan's death. Under normal circumstances, given the conflict between Great West Emperor and Great East Emperor, he would have already come looking for revenge. But Great West Emperor hasn't done anything yet. This can only mean one thing, and that is that Great West Emperor has also thought of this, which is why he hasn't made a move. In that case, the force that Peng Shiren belongs to will still make a move," said Yu Yueqing. She did her best to straighten her posture and control her snake body. Although moving was no different from walking on two legs in a normal situation, this abrupt feeling was still present. This Peng Shiren doesn't know that King Tiankuan has already transferred the Yin scroll, and that it's in Madame Shan Xiu's hands. So the most likely scenario now is that he'll directly snatch the Yang scroll. Then he'll use a magic treasure or secret art from the old world to replicate the Yin scroll. Taoist Yu is absolutely right. At that moment, Wang Ying's eyes met Yu Yueqing's. This Taoist priest was young, but extremely quick-witted. On the other side, Zhang Zipei had also come over with the Yin scroll that Madame Shan Xiu had given him. Madame Shan Xiu was a woman of her word. Not only did she explain the whole story, she also directly offered the Yin scroll to Wang Ying. She wasn't stupid. In her hands, this thing was no different from an invisible time bomb. Furthermore, as an orthodox cultivator, she had no intention of opening it at all. No cultivator in their right mind would want the terrifying civilization of the old world to revive in the eternal cultivation world. That dark and twisted history should remain as history forever, sealed in the long river of time. What should we do? What should we do with this thing? Zhang Zipei took the initiative to hand over the Yin scroll. Wang Ling accepted the Dao Yin scroll, but he had no intention of opening it. Although he was curious about the old world, he was now well aware that he was making a decision on behalf of future cultivators. Thus, he didn't think too much about it. A dazzling black and white flame immediately rose in his hand, and with a bang, the Yin scroll was directly burned to ashes. East Great Emperor's Adam's apple couldn't help bobbing up and down. He never thought that the Een scroll of the Book of Nine Realms would actually be burned so easily. What kind of method was this? In the last few days, the methods that this senior hiding in his body had repeatedly displayed had already surpassed East Great Emperor's own understanding. Especially when he had just heard people say that Prung Shiren, who had inherited Dao ancestor Wang's legacy, had been beaten up by this senior Wang in the modern cultivation world. East Great Emperor's heart was filled with mixed feelings. What kind of person was Dao ancestor Wang? This was the legend and pearl of the eternal cultivation world. This group of people actually didn't revere such a person at all. This was too scary. Even East Great Emperor himself began to have faint doubts. Was the first founder of cultivation Dao ancestor Wang or not? Chapter 1882. At the entrance of Spring Orchid Restaurant, Madame Shan Xiu left with Mei Yunhai, Sun Fu, Chen Ren, and Guijie. Sun Fu successfully received the recommendation letter from Mr. Room 1 to the East Emperor's Imperial Palace. She was very pleased. Originally, the East Emperor only promised to keep Sun Fu by his side temporarily. It was just a vague evasive move. He wanted to wait for the right time to reject Sun Fu. But now, Madame Shan Xiu had fulfilled her promise regarding the Book of Nine Realms. It could be said that she had made a great contribution. He felt that if he still did not agree to Sun Fu's request, it would be unreasonable. Therefore, he immediately asked Zhang Zi to draft a recommendation letter using Li Ren's notes and stamped it with the royal seal that was prepared in advance. He then sent the entire letter to Sun Fu. Sure enough, after receiving the recommendation letter, Sun Fu was overjoyed. Oh my God, this is the 9-star royal seal. This person is really a big shot. His status is noble. With this recommendation letter, there's 100% chance that you'll be able to cultivate in the East Region Imperial Palace. The few of them stared at the seal on the recommendation letter with their eyes wide open. The royal family was a noble member of any domain, but there were actually different ranks among the members of the royal family. Under normal circumstances, a royal family with a 9-star royal seal could only mean one thing. That was that this royal family had a direct bloodline connection with the emperor in the East Emperor Palace. Therefore, their status was far more noble than ordinary royal families. Thank you, madam. If it wasn't for you, I think this matter most likely wouldn't have happened. Sun Fu smiled brightly, like a dazzling summer flower. Sister Fu, do you really want to enter the East Emperor Palace? Is there something there that attracts you? Madam has the best relationship with the South Emperor Palace. If you entered the South Emperor Palace, Madam wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Guijie asked. I can only say that this is a kind of fate. I always feel that I am fated with the East Emperor Palace, and I seem to have met this Mr. Room 1 somewhere before. Sun Fu said. You will have a chance to meet again. Madame Shan Xiu smiled. Sun Fu was stunned. Yes, you guys. Madame Shan Xiu maintained her benevolent smile. She swept her gaze over Sun Fu, Chen Ren, and Guijie with a meaningful look in her eyes. On the other side, after sorting out his basic thoughts, Wang Ling already had a clear idea of what to do next. If he was right, Prung Shiren would definitely continue to make a move on the Yang scroll in his hands. In this situation, all he needed to do was wait for the heir to come to him, but he felt that he couldn't wait that long. He had to find Prung Shiren and then resolve this ill-fated relationship from ancient times. However, with the vastness of the eternal world and the number of galaxies, it was like looking for a needle in a haystack to find a person in the vast number of planets. He had no choice but to require the help of others. Fortunately, Wang Ling had already contacted quite a few partners. As long as everyone worked together, it wouldn't be difficult to find Prung Shiren no matter how vast the universe was. With the help of the other great emperors, it'll be easier to find this Prung Shiren if we combine the strength of the 4 emperors to lay an inescapable net, East Great Emperor said through the voice chat spell. But the 4 emperors' assembly hasn't started yet. How do we contact the other great emperors? Zhang Zi asked secretly. There was a way to contact the other great emperors, but it wasn't direct. They still needed to wait for their responses, and any delay might cause problems. Thus, East Great Emperor thought that it was best to have someone who could act as a medium to pass on information at this time. Furthermore, this person had to be very clear about the positions of the four great emperors. The first person East Great Emperor thought of in the eternal world was Lu Mukin, the president of the Central Auction House. Senior Wang, didn't you say before that Lu Renwen, the son of the president of the Central Auction House, is also one of you? East Great Emperor suddenly asked at that moment. That's right. He also transmigrated from modern cultivation society to the eternal world. Wang Ying nodded. If this senior can use his identity as the son of the president of the Central Auction House, Lu Renwen, to invite his father, Lu Mukin, out of retirement. This Lu Mukin should be a medium to pass on information about us four emperors, and he might have the means to find a place for us to meet before the four emperors' assembly, East Great Emperor said. He knows about you four emperors? Who on earth is he? Wang Ying was very curious. I heard that this Lu Mukin used to be Dao ancestor Wang's personal guard. No wonder he has this kind of ability. Wang Ying sighed. He felt that all this could be considered an arrangement. Fortunately, the person who had transmigrated into Lu Renwen's body was Qin Zong, so as long as Wang Ling sent a telepathic message to Qin Zong from afar to ask him to do this, it shouldn't be difficult to invite Lu Mukin out of retirement. In fact, Lu Mukin and Qin Zong arrived a little faster than he had imagined. He had only sent the message to Qin Zong less than a quarter of an hour ago. Two tightly wrapped black-robed figures appeared at the entrance of the Spring Orchid Brothel. One of them was Qin Zong, who had transmigrated into Lu Renwen's body. Everyone was very surprised that this matter had been settled so quickly. Senior Qin settled it so quickly? Lotus Sun glanced at Qin Zong, who had taken off his hood, and then saw the person standing next to him also take off his hood. This was a middle-aged man with a well-proportioned build and a mustache. At first glance, Lotus Sun's impression of him was that he was naturally dignified and gave off a faint sense of dignity. This person was none other than Lu Mukin himself. Considering that Lu Mukin had previously been Dao ancestor Wang's personal guard, it wasn't too surprising that he had this kind of aura. But very quickly, Lotus Sun realized that this Lu Mukin was gradually losing his composure. He first looked at Lotus Sun and said, "Mistress." Lotus Sun immediately returned a startled look. "You are," then that dignified face started to twist, and the moment he saw East Great Emperor, he dropped to one knee on the ground on the spot and threw himself at Wang Ling with tears in his eyes. "Shifu, oh Shifu, disciple missed you so much. What would disciple do without you?" Wang Ling. In fact, even Wang Ling himself never thought that Ajua would actually transmigrate into the body of Lu Mukin, the president of the Central Auction House. This world was really too small. At that moment, Wang Ling sighed endlessly in his heart. Chapter 1883. As Ajua threw a tantrum, Wang Ling couldn't help feeling a little absent-minded. In that instant, he suddenly felt that the world was really too small. Of course, all of this was an inexorable arrangement and coincidence, and it could also be said to be a kind of luck. Although he hadn't cast the Great Luck spell on himself, Qin Zong was the only koi he had chosen in the cultivation world. With this koi, their luck naturally wouldn't be too bad. Lu Mukin, the president of the Central Auction House, was the only person who controlled the intelligence network of the four territories. Throughout the ages, no one had been able to replace Lu Mukin as the perfect middleman. It was just that for Wang Ling, whether or not Ajua could play the role of Lu Mukin well was still a question. In short, the real Lu Mukin would never do something like cry for his parents and throw himself at anyone he saw. He was actually rubbing his head against Wang Ling's chest. What a scandal! Wang Ling calmly pushed Ajua's head away and sighed in his heart, feeling that Ajua didn't have the slightest sensitivity. If Ryoko Kamiya saw this, she would definitely be jealous. "That's not right, how do you know this?" Just then, Wang Ying suddenly asked Wang Ling telepathically. As Wang Ling's shadow, he and Wang Ling were telepathically connected, so he noticed a blind spot in Wang Ling's thoughts. Wang Ying found it inconceivable that an unromantic teenager who always had a poker face would actually know how to be jealous. Wang Ling felt that Wang Ying was making a mountain out of a molehill when he asked this question. Of course, he hadn't experienced the various emotions that a normal person should have, and naturally didn't know what jealousy felt like. But it wasn't that he didn't completely understand what jealousy meant. To be exact, Wang Ling knew the literal state of every emotion. In Wang Ling's dictionary, jealousy was categorized as a special possessiveness. For example, this was the reaction you would have when you saw something or someone you liked getting closer to someone else. In this regard, Wang Ling deliberately gave Wang Ying an example patiently. For example, when he sometimes saw other people eating limited edition crispy noodle snacks that he couldn't buy, he would often have this feeling. This is jealousy. This is definitely jealousy. Wang Ying dropped his forehead into his hand. He felt that Wang Ling's understanding of jealousy seemed to have a strange deviation, but obviously, this wasn't the time to discuss this. Right now, their biggest mission was to gather the 4 emperors and hold a secret meeting ahead of time. Then, they would set up a trap to lure Peng Shiren out. As the core of this plan, Ajwa would play a crucial role in the subsequent plot. Don't worry, Master. I have confidence in this matter. Elder, you don't need to move. I'll use Lu Mukin's method to call the other imperial capitals here in Chunlan building. Ajwa promised solemnly. Everyone knew that in the immemorial cultivation world, other than Dao ancestor Wang, the people with the highest status were the 4 emperors who controlled the 4 domains. Under normal circumstances, it was extremely difficult for a normal cultivator to meet the great emperor. As for making the 4 emperors instantly gather at a specific location, it was even more impossible in the eyes of ordinary people. However, Lu Mukin had this special charisma. Even Zhang Zizi was very curious. Even if Lu Mukin was once Dao ancestor Wang's guard, does he really have the face to invite other great emperors? There must be some other reason behind this. Do you have something on them to threaten them? Threaten? How is that possible? In any case, this Lu Mukin used to be Dao ancestor Wang's guard. How could he do such a despicable thing? Furthermore, the targets of this threat are the great emperors. Although this Lu Mukin is strong, it won't be easy to offend 4 great emperors at the same time, right? Ajwa said. After listening in, Zhang Zizi frowned and nodded. That's true. But now, everyone was even more curious as to what method Lu Mukin would use to call the other 3 great emperors here. In the end, Ajwa just took out a storage bag from Lu Mukin's body. Actually, he hadn't been idle in the past few days when he hadn't met up with Wang Ling. He had been studying his identity through the memories Lu Mukin had passed on to him, putting himself in the role and waiting for an opportunity to act. He knew that he would definitely meet up with Wang Ling, so he had already familiarized himself with everything early on. To everyone's surprise, the thing that Ajwa took out from Lu Mukin's personal storage bag was very simple. It was a crystal communication ball that couldn't be any more ordinary, and was a relatively advanced communication device in the immemorial cultivation world. Unlike ordinary communication talismans, not only could it hold more spirit energy imprints corresponding to different cultivators, it could also establish a huge network of contacts. The most important thing was that it could directly make a face-to-face video call and project images into the air. You're so close that you can directly use a communication ball to summon someone? East Great Emperor was stupefied and shocked. Although he also had Lu Mukin's communication ball, as one of the 4 great emperors, he knew that summoning a great emperor-level figure to a designated location, even if it was Lu Mukin, the process wouldn't be that convenient. But now, Lu Mukin had actually directly called to summon someone. Had his relationship with the other 3 great emperors already reached this level? At that moment, East Great Emperor started to feel a sense of crisis. Don't be nervous, it's not as outrageous as you think. Ajwa gave a mysterious smile. Then he used the communication crystal ball to directly contact West Great Emperor. Little Shi, you can come over now. That's right, that Chunlan house on the central trade planet, it's next to the temple. Little Shi? Everyone was startled by this familiar form of address. Was the person calling Little Shi really an emperor? And not an underling? Why did it feel like déjà vu of a mafia boss ordering his underling around? For all East Great Emperor had a mental breakdown. He never expected the relationship between West Great Emperor and Lu Mukin to be this good. Directly calling him little, she was outrageous. But just as he was about to vomit blood, West Great Emperor's voice came through the communication crystal ball. Are you sure? King Tianquan is dead, and I'm still dealing with the chaos here. The court officials have reported to me to directly send troops to attack the Eastern Territory, but I'm still playing Tai Chi with them. Don't pay attention to them. Find an excuse to get away and come directly here. My Shifu, Master's wife, Senior Zhang Zijin, Brother Wang Zhen, Miss Lu Qingyi, Taoist Yu Yueqing and Brother Qin Zong are all here, Ajwa said. After saying this, everyone finally understood and understood a little. Lotus Sun instantly understood, and an enlightened expression appeared on her face. Senior Zhua, could it be that this great West Emperor is also? At that moment, Ajwa smiled. That's right. This West Great Emperor is actually Senior Li Xian. Brother Qin Zong and I didn't do anything else in the past few days in the Eternal World except make calls through this communication crystal ball. In the end, we didn't expect each call to be accurate. Hearing this, everyone was even more shocked. Lotus Sun, then the other two emperors? Master's wife, you're right. The other two emperors are also our people. North Emperor is Brother Xiang Yi, and the only female emperor, South Emperor, is Senior Golden Lamp. Senior Golden Lamp. Don't worry, they're all very good at acting. After all, Senior Golden Lamp had the experience of being a woman in several reincarnations. He's more than enough to play an empress. That is to say, apart from Brother Gu Xuanji, we've found everyone else who has transmigrated to the Eternal World. No, there's still isn't with me. Don't worry, Master's wife, I haven't finished calling my contacts yet. Later, I'll have Senior Qin Zong stand on the side and call a few more. Chapter 1884. Wang Ying also knew that Sun Yinger had disappeared. Although he didn't show it on the surface, he had already secretly activated Shadow Dao's sensing ability to sense her many times. But for some reason, after coming to this Eternal World, the connection between him and Sun Yinger had been completely cut off, and there was no sign of any connection at all. Wang Ying was sure that this wasn't a problem with Shadow Dao. After all, the connection between him and Wang Ling was still there, which meant that Shadow Dao was operating normally. But why couldn't he sense Sun Yinger? Wang Ying felt that there might be some other reason behind this. Fortunately, the good news was that of the four emperors who currently controlled the Eternal World, East Emperor was jointly controlled by Wang Ling and Wang Ling, while the other three emperors were on his side. In addition, Ajwa was playing the role of Lu Mukin, who controlled the strongest intelligence network in the Eternal World. As long as they worked together, it wouldn't be difficult to find a specific person, even if it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. They just needed to use their respective forces to send out the appropriate signal across the universe. Of course, the most important prerequisite for this was that Sun Yinger had to respond to him. For example, Wang Ling had used a hint at the auction house earlier to get in touch with Qin Zong, Lu Qingyi and Yu Yueqing. While waiting for the rest of his partners to arrive at Chunlan Building, Wang Ying clearly felt uneasy. President Ying, are you worried about Ying? Lotus Sun was happy to see this. She thought this would be a very good demonstration, especially for Wang Ling, and would be of great reference value. But while the demonstration was a classic, so was the tsundra. Wang Ying snorted and crossed his arms with East Emperor's body as he said coldly, "Heh, who's worried about her?" It wasn't easy for her to hide in this Eternal World. Now that she doesn't have to be under my control, I'm afraid she can't wait to be happy. Although Wang Ying's tsundra wasn't as exaggerated as Ryoko Kamiya's, he had his own unique side. Lotus Sun thought that this might be the legendary contrasting cuteness. After all, Wang Ying indeed didn't have the word cute in him. President Ying, it's not good to lie. Don't you want to find Ying? Heh, it's best if I can't find her. Otherwise, I'll have to find her every night and make her back hurt. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but gasp. Those who didn't know the truth felt that this sentence seemed to contain a lot of information. The master hadn't even started yet, but the shadows were progressing at a godly speed. They were already so lovey-dovey. What a scandal! Perhaps Xiao Ying is right. Without Inger around, you really don't have to worry. But apart from Inger, I'm afraid no one can withstand your planetary blockbuster spell, Lotus Sun said again. This time, she chose to retreat in order to advance. Wang Ying was as stubborn as ever, refusing to admit that he wanted to find Sun Yinger. Even if I, Wang Ying, am scolded to death, I will die outside. He would never think about anything related to this fellow. She's the master of the void. Why should I worry? What a joke. The short conversation between the two echoed in the space, and no one could interrupt. The rest of the people just watched silently. From beginning to end, Lotus Sun's gaze never stopped on the East Great Emperor, causing his hair to stand on end. But the person she really cared about wasn't East Great Emperor, but Wang Ling. She really wanted to know how much Wang Ling had comprehended from it. There's always a way. At that moment, Wang Zhen said weakly to comfort everyone. And I think that it doesn't matter even if we don't find her. As long as we finish this plot, it means that our mission is over. Once it's over, everyone who transmigrated from the modern era to eternity will be able to go back together, right? In theory, that's true, but there's always the what if, Ajwa said. Ajwa said, in short, it's naturally the best if we can find everyone. Brother Wang Zhen, don't worry too much. Don't worry, before the script is over, you definitely won't have a child. After all, you haven't been pregnant for long, and you haven't taken any elixirs to accelerate your pregnancy, so there shouldn't be any problems. Wang Zhen immediately blushed at Ajwa's words. Let me be clear, I'm not doing this for myself. I know, we all understand. Ajwa stretched out his hand and patted him on the shoulder. If it were me, I would also panic. So when it comes to this, we have to learn from Senior Golden Lamp. Why? Do you think Senior Golden Lamp never experienced childbirth when he chose to be a woman in his countless reincarnations? Following Ajwa's nonsense, the scene fell deathly silent. On the other side, Sun Yinger was also in despair. How could she not want to get in touch with the main force as soon as possible? But there was nothing Sun Yinger could do now. She screamed and roared in her heart thousands of times, hoping that someone here would discover her existence sooner. But what made Sun Yinger even more desperate was that she couldn't make a sound in her current state. Most importantly, the binding between them had failed, and Wang Ying couldn't use Shadow Dao to sense her existence. This idiot! How could such a cunning and quick-witted person like him not discover her existence? She had thought that after being tortured by Wang Ying's planet-drumming spell countless times, the two of them should have a very good rapport with each other. Who would have thought that it would actually fail at this critical moment? Sun Yinger's heart was filled with sorrow. Of course, after thinking about it carefully, she felt that she couldn't completely blame Wang Ying for not being able to discover her. After all, no one would have thought that she was so far away, yet right in front of their eyes. That was right. After coming to Immortal, the character she had transmigrated into was the child in the belly of the Holy Stone Church's Holy Virgin, played by Wang Zhen. At first, Sun Yinger hadn't realized this, and thought that she had just been trapped by some array. But Lu Qingyi's slap on Wang Zhen after she saw him had directly jolted her awake. So at that moment, Sun Yinger's heart was on the verge of collapse. She was really too miserable. What a scam! Why did other people transmigrate into Immortal and act as emperors? Goddess! A filthy rich second generation. At the very least, she was a maid at His Highness's side. She was just a baby who couldn't move a thing and had zero fighting strength. Sun Yinger realized that she really had a mental breakdown. The point was that she was really scared. If the plot was over and no one found her, would she return to the modern world with everyone? If she was unfortunately left alone in Immortal, how would she go back? Chapter 1885. Perhaps even the boss of Chunlan Building himself didn't expect to receive such a big deal today, even though he had already gone out to enjoy himself after receiving the booking fee. East Great Emperor had directly given him enough money to rebuild Chunlan Building. Even if East Great Emperor demolished the place during the negotiations, the boss wouldn't complain at all. But Chunlan Building was essentially a place for male and female cultivators of the eternal world to have fun, and it was also the place where the most courtesans and grass bosses gathered in the entire Central Region's trading star system. And it was in this place of debauchery, filled with all kinds of dazzling illusions and extravagance, that a shocking secret meeting of the four emperors was about to take place, which was something that most cultivators throughout the ages would never have imagined. Because of the gathering of the four emperors, the other three emperors weren't far from the central trade star. Following Audiobook's signal to assemble, three cloaked men quickly arrived at Spring Orchid Building, wrapped tightly in cloaks. Wang Ling didn't even need to sense them to know that they were the remaining three emperors. Even if their figures were hidden extremely well by their cloaks, he could still sense that they were extraordinary from their imposing auras. In the communication crystal ball earlier, Audiobook had already hinted that they needed to help Wang Ling hide his identity, so when the three of them came up, they respectfully lined up in front of East Great Emperor. After putting on a good show, they respectfully and humbly bowed in unison. This humble monk is Jin Deng, Xiang Li Xian. Greetings, Senior Wang. It had to be said that monk Jin Deng indeed looked very familiar with controlling this body of an empress. It didn't feel like a man at all, and instead embodied the charm of an empress to the fullest. The only thing that was out of place was that he still retained the habit of being a monk. As everyone knew, although monk Jin Deng had been a woman, he was overall still a decent monk. Reincarnation was nothing more than his daily work as a supreme Buddhist saint, and there was nothing to make a fuss about. It was just that East Great Emperor was now thinking about this name carefully, and it suddenly dawned on him. When he had heard Audiobook call out Golden Lamp's name before, he had felt that it sounded very familiar. Now that monk Golden Lamp used the term, "this poor monk," to introduce himself, East Great Emperor immediately came back to his senses. "So it's you. After so many years, I didn't expect to see East Great Emperor's charm again after such a long time. This humble monk is very lucky." Monk Jin Deng performed a Buddhist salute in the Empress's body and then sat down cross-legged. "Jin Deng, I didn't expect it to really be you. I thought it was just a coincidence." East Great Emperor was shocked. Who would have thought that this Jin Deng was actually the monk Jin Deng? Not only had this monk lived into the modern cultivation world. Not only that, Jin Great Emperor, but he was also one of the best. For a moment, the Great East Emperor had mixed feelings. Although Golden Lamp Monk's strength was not as heaven-defying as it was now, he was still one of the most talented players. He was once considered a strong competitor for the throne of the Great Emperor. With everyone assembled, Wang Ing scanned the area in front of him and nodded in satisfaction. He then began to convey Wang Ling's message on his behalf. "I believe that everyone is clear about what to do next. The situation is urgent. What we need to do now is to put this section of history back on the right track." "Understood." The other three emperors nodded at the same time. They were all old acquaintances in their bodies, so there was no problem communicating at all. Lastly, about the reward for the successful completion of this mission. At that moment, Wang Ing spoke. In theory, most of the people here were now members of Battle Sect. Although Xiang Yi and Qin Zong were temporary guest officials and elders, they were in fact still part of the official establishment. Generally speaking, Battle Sect would assign a difficulty rating based on the mission, with the lowest being D, followed by C, B, I, S, SS, and the highest being SSS. Battle Sect would then organize teams based on the difficulty of the mission, and finally give a score of 10 points based on the completion of the mission as well as the performance of all the mission executors during the execution of the mission. During the mission, if the score was less than 6, it meant that you didn't have an outstanding overall performance, and you would only get a portion of the mission points, which would be accumulated and exchanged for corresponding items in Battle Sect's treasury. Scores above 6 were completely different. Furthermore, if the difficulty of the mission was high, the reward would also be very amazing. Wang Ling wasn't a stingy person, although he knew very well that as long as he said the word, everyone would do their best. But sometimes, a proper reward was still necessary. This is a temporary mission, And the difficulty of this mission is the highest since the founding of our sect, SSS. All core members of Battle Sect with a score of 6 and above can choose a magic treasure of their choice from the king's treasure pants, Wang Ying said straightforwardly as he conveyed Wang Ling's meaning. Everyone's eyes instantly lit up. Wang Ling didn't think much of the things in Wang Jibao's pants, but for everyone here, every item inside was a treasure that people would scramble to get their hands on. Of course, it was usually grenade-throwing senior Immortal and the elders of Battle Sect who would hold a meeting to discuss and decide how to grade disciples for sect missions. Occasionally, some sect disciples would deliberately curry favor with some elders to cover up their poor performance in missions, which would make things a little unfair. This was in fact a very serious violation of the rules, and if it was found out, there would be very severe punishments. If it was more severe, they might be directly expelled from Battle Sect. But with Wang Ling supervising the entire operation this time, there was absolutely no objection to this mission. Ling Jinren personally grading the mission was absolutely fair and just. So the problem now was how they could set up a trap to lure Peng Shiren out. Given Peng Shiren's cautious character, if East Great Emperor didn't reveal any flaws, he definitely wouldn't try to snatch the Book of 9 Realms. But if he deliberately revealed a flaw, it would be too obvious, which would instead make Peng Shiren suspicious. At that moment, the 4 emperors had gathered together in a secret meeting, and all the networks and intelligence networks of the entire world were gathered here. Very quickly, Xiang Yi, who was playing the role of North Emperor, suddenly said, "That's right, there seems to be something like this in North Emperor's memories. I remember that the Peng family is looking for a son-in-law, and the person they're looking for is Peng Shiren's younger sister, Peng Basin, so I think it would be better." After thinking for a bit, Xiang Yi quickly stopped and shook his head. "No, forget it, I won't say it. This can only be considered a bad idea." "You can say it first. It's just a discussion, it's fine," Wang Ying said. Xiang Yi first looked at Lotus Sun, then said a little awkwardly, "What I mean is, since the original copy of the Book of 9 Realms is with Senior Wang, why don't we have him bring the original copy to propose marriage?" Hearing this, everyone was startled at first, and then many of them nodded their heads one after another. "Not bad, this idea doesn't seem too bad," said Li Xian, who was the West Great Emperor. This, how can we do that?" But at that moment, Lotus Sun suddenly stood up agitatedly, her face red. "Absolutely not. It's too dangerous." His anxious look made everyone around him smile knowingly. Looking at Lotus Sun's expression, the corners of Oj's mouth rose wildly, and he simply couldn't stop himself. "Then, mistress, what do you want to do?" Quick-witted, Lotus Sun patted her chest and said, "How about this? Give me the Book of 9 Realms. I'll dress up as a man and propose marriage." The error-free chapters of the daily life of the Immortal King will continue to be updated in the Popular Bar. Everyone, please bookmark and recommend the Popular Bar. Those who like the daily life of the Immortal King, please bookmark. The daily life of the Immortal King's Popular Bar is the fastest to update. Chapter 1886. Under everyone's meaningful gazes, Lotus Sun's face grew redder and redder. To be honest, even she hadn't expected to come up with such a bold and constructive suggestion. In short, anyone could go and propose. East Great Emperor wasn't allowed to go. Even if East Great Emperor was using his own body, he still had Wang Ling and Wang Ying in it. Lotus Sun felt that this was a little strange. She thought that her actions could be regarded as righteous, and not just for her own selfish reasons, but also for Sun Yinger's sake. These two shadows had been lovey-dovey for so long and were about to succeed. How could she ruin the critical juncture with something like this? That's right. Her suggestion now was generally for the sake of Sun Yinger and Wang Ying's happiness. It had nothing to do with her at all. Why do I get the feeling that you're a little anxious? Nonsense. Of course not. Lotus Sun's face grew hotter, and she looked around at the crowd. Am I anxious? Am I anxious? Do I look like I'm anxious? Lu Qingyi patted her on the shoulder and sighed. Don't say it, good disciple. It seems like you are a little. Yu Yueqing also nodded. A little anxious. Seeing everyone's meaningful gazes, Lotus Sun took several deep breaths and tried to regain her composure. Fine. Even if I'm a little anxious, this is also for the sake of history returning to the right path. This is for the greater good of all cultivators. It's very normal. As expected of Master's wife, we admire her for being able to uphold the greater good of cultivators in this situation. Hearing this, the corners of Aj's mouth curled up slightly. He couldn't bear to continue leading the crowd in teasing Lotus Sunday. In any case, everyone present was well aware of what her anxious action meant. The only one who didn't understand the situation was that expressionless man hiding in East Great Emperor's body. After all, the Book of 9 Realms was a hot potato in the current situation. Even if it was in East Great Emperor's hands, it might not be safe, let alone in Lotus Sun's hands. But on second thought, he felt that it might be easier to leave this matter to Lotus Sunday. In any case, the course of history was already a mess. It wouldn't matter even if Lotus Sun summoned the mysterious sea. If they really ran into an emergency, with the mysterious sea's protective sword body, Wang Ling didn't think that the Peng family would be a match for the 9 Corps' mysterious sea. Of course, the more important reason was that he thought girls would understand girls better, so it would be very abrupt for a few men to suddenly propose marriage. Lotus Sun's thoughts were a little more meticulous, which might make the whole thing seem even smoother. After deciding on the plan, Lotus Sun heaved a long sigh of relief. Lu Qingyi and Yu Yueqing helped to give Lotus Sun an exquisite makeover, mainly focusing on her skin tone and facial features, so that her originally delicate face now had a more masculine contour. He didn't make too many changes to his hairstyle. He just adjusted the length of his hair so that it fell down naturally. Then he added some bangs on both sides of his forehead, instantly making him look like a handsome and elegant man. When everyone saw Lotus Sun come out of the room in a pure white man's suit, they couldn't take their eyes off her. Her foundation was excellent to begin with, and even though she had been dressed as a man, she was still stunning. Even East Great Emperor was flabbergasted. Whether it was a man or a woman, such a face could be called an immortal. Even if the 4 Great Emperors' imperial palaces were full of handsome men and beautiful women, they wouldn't be able to find anyone who couldn't take their eyes off her at first glance. In fact, cross-dressing was the best way to tell whether a person was good or bad. It was true that beauty was in the bones, not the skin. It's feasible. I think it's totally feasible. Bring the Book of 9 Realms and the betrothal gift to propose marriage. I guarantee that Peng Basin will like you at first glance. For some reason, Aj suddenly felt a little excited. After everyone came up with a plan for the marriage proposal, the core members of Battle Sect, who were playing the roles of the 4 Great Emperors, as well as Lu Mukin's Ajwa, quickly set up an inescapable net to prepare for the subsequent marriage proposal. Although it was just an act, it was in fact fishing. Since they were going to catch a fish, they naturally had to make all the necessary preparations. The marriage proposal team had to be luxurious and couldn't be lower than the standard of a 9-star imperial family in the eternal cultivation world. Furthermore, the team had to be densely packed with experts, and the lowest realm standard had to be Dao God level. The Sea Calming Pearl, Sky Jade, 8 Desolation Ruler, 9-Faced Lion Heart, a dazzling array of magic treasures and natural treasures formed a long list that stretched as far as the eye could see. This was a list of treasures from the 4 Great Emperor palaces. Every item was so precious that it was enough to drive the cultivators of the eternal world crazy. But now, these things were going to be the betrothal gift to the Peng family, which made people sigh. The East Great Emperor sweated when he saw this. Isn't this a little overprepared? It's just for show. There's no need for East Emperor to worry. Xiangyi laughed. In any case, these things aren't ours, so don't worry too much. East Emperor was speechless. What Aj said made so much sense that he was speechless for a moment. Next, they headed straight for the Peng family's headquarters. If it wasn't for the 4 emperors' secret meeting this time, perhaps no one would have known that the Peng family's forces had already spread across the 4 major territories, and that the reason why the Peng family had set up their headquarters in the Central Territory was because it was convenient for trade. On the other hand, it was also because they could control the forces of the 4 territories through this central location, which made it easier for them to distribute the Prng family's spies among the major territories. Although the 4 emperors had sent intelligence personnel to investigate the Prng family before, the information obtained was limited. The universe was so big that the detection of intelligence could not be too obvious, not to mention that this information was not made public. Even though the East Emperor had already judged that the Prng family's power network over the years had probably expanded to an unimaginable level before this secret meeting, when they marked the distribution of the Prng family's major forces as asterisks on the same map, they couldn't help but be shocked. The East Emperor was shocked when he saw the stars all over the map. It seems that the Prng family's ambition is not small. I'm afraid they also have sympathy for the throne, Wang Ying said. East Emperor was also worried about this. The Prng family is too scary. They colluded with the old world. We must not let them seize the general trend. I don't know if we can take this opportunity to suppress them. Wang Ying nodded. Of course. Originally, weakening the Prng family's power was also within our scope, wasn't it? Chapter 1887. Although it was she who had volunteered to dress up as a man to propose marriage, she still couldn't help feeling a little hesitant and nervous when it really came time to do it. After all, a lot of boys didn't have any experience with marriage proposals, let alone a girl like her. And for some reason, she felt that it was a little weird to do it. Her original intention had been to stop Wang Ling from proposing. No, her original intention had been to keep Sun Yinger and Wang Ying together for the sake of righteousness. But it wasn't Wang Ling who had proposed, but she was the one who was going to get married in the end. She had dug a hole for herself. After realizing this, Lotus Sun even felt a little remorseful, and felt that she had been too rash in the end. Also, this was a serious matter, because the success or failure of the marriage proposal would directly affect the course of human cultivators' history. If anything went wrong, she would be a sinner in history. This heavy pressure made it hard for her to breathe, and she kept taking deep breaths on the way to the Prng family's main residence. Lu Qingyi and Yu Yueqing disguised themselves as maids and stayed by her side. Since King Tianquan wasn't around, they didn't have to force themselves to stay in their snake forms, and directly grew legs to look no different from ordinary people. Why are you getting nervous so close to the end? Lu Qingyi asked with a smile as she comforted her. You don't have to feel too heavy of a burden, it's just an act. Lotus Sun understood that, but it was normal for people to reflect on themselves, and the more outstanding they were, the more it was so. She was so nervous that the muscles in her stomach ached, and she was full of regret. If she had obediently listened to Wang Ling and not intervened in this matter, things might not have come to this. Now that the turning point in history had been handed to her, if she messed it up again, she was really worried that her friendship with Wang Ling would plummet to an all-time low. It hadn't been easy for her and Wang Ling to come into contact with each other at this level. At that moment, Lotus Sun's thoughts were all over the place. As her imagination ran wild, she never thought that the person who would comfort her at that moment would actually be Yu Yueqing, whom she had always been on high alert against. You, don't think too much at a time like this. Do you think it's your fault that things have become complicated? All of this was planned, including the fact that you gathered so many people to decipher the mysterious text and accidentally fell into this eternal world. It was all planned. Yu Yueqing looked calmly at Lotus Sun and said, "We're actually just pawns used by these seniors in the game. Since he was a chess piece, he just had to follow the plan step by step. Besides, why did Ling Ling agree to let you go? Haven't you considered it at all?" Hearing this, Lotus Sun abruptly raised her head, the expression on her face somewhat frozen. Yes, such an important mission was not child's play. Why had Wang Ling so readily agreed to let her do it? At this time, with Yu Yueqing's reminder, Lotus Sun vaguely began to understand. Ling Ling trusts you, that's why he gave you such an important task, Yu Yueqing said to Lotus Sun with a serious expression. At the same time, when she saw Lotus Sun's astonished expression, she couldn't help but feel amused. What? You looked at me in such a shocked manner, thinking that I would go out of my way to comfort you. Is it unbelievable? Taoist master, you misunderstood. You're being insincere again. Yu Yueqing laughed and swung her legs in a very relaxed and contented manner. Actually, I already have someone I like. I know. Lotus Sun lowered her head. It's classmate Wang Ling, right? No. Yu Yueqing shook her head like a rattle. Eh? This time, both Lotus Sun and Lu Qingyi were astonished. Those birthday presents you showed off earlier were indeed from Wang Ling, but I just wanted to tease you. Yu Yueqing was very straightforward and directly laid her cards on the table. Oh, there was a time when I was a kid when I really liked Ling Ling, but it wasn't until I became a Taoist and grew up that I realized that kind of feeling. It's probably just a sibling relationship. I think it's better for him to be my older brother. Then the person Taoist master you likes? Lu Qingyi suddenly asked. Perhaps realizing that she was being too nosy, she quickly waved her hand. It's fine, Taoist master you. It's fine even if you don't tell me, I'm just curious. Yu Yueqing blinked, her eyes sparkling beautifully. When the time comes, I'll naturally tell you. But Ling Ling isn't bad. If I'm rejected in the end, maybe I can use him as a spare tire? Lotus Sun and Yu Yueqing. Spare tire? Yu Yueqing's eyes curved into crescents as she laughed again. You guys can't handle this. AI, how boring. This rather sincere exchange did indeed ease the tension in Lotus Sun's heart a lot. She had a vague feeling that Yu Yueqing's identity wasn't as simple as it seemed. At least for now, in Lotus Sun's eyes, Yu Yueqing really was very mysterious. The Peng family's headquarters was set up on Penglai planet in the central region of the galaxy. This was a dangerous place surrounded by many celestial bodies that contained powerful cosmic energy, and cultivators who passed by were swept up in them from time to time. The Peng family's headquarters here could be said to be like a fortress, easy to defend and difficult to attack. To the outside world, Penglai planet belonged to everyone, but almost all the businesses on it were related to the Peng family. This was an empire that belonged solely to the Peng family. The Peng family's headquarters on Penglai planet was a golden palace with richly carved beams and painted rafters. There were even quite a few carvings of creatures that didn't belong to the ancient cultivation world. These were the carvings of ancient creatures from the ancient world, which the Peng family had grandly carved into the walls as murals. It was clear that the Peng family's arrogance had reached a shocking level. At the border of Penglai planet, as Lotus Sun and the others' carriages passed by, a group of ancient city guards quickly surrounded them on disc-shaped magic artifacts. These neutral guards, who had originally been brought together by the 4 great emperors of the 4 regions to maintain the stability of the central region galaxy, had now become the targets of the Peng family's instigation. East Great Emperor was very dissatisfied with this. Holding his breath, he looked at the group of Penglai planet's ancient city guards and asked them in a very arrogant manner, "Who are you? What are you doing here? Do you know what kind of place Penglai planet is? I remember that the central region galaxy isn't under the jurisdiction of any power." East Great Emperor said indifferently as he stared at the ancient city guards in front of him, his expression fearless. "Today, I brought my family's young master to Penglai planet to propose marriage." Propose marriage? One of the ancient city guards smiled, extremely curious. "Everyone here is from the Peng family. Who can you go to propose marriage to? I remember that this isn't something a guard like you should be asking." East Great Emperor did his best to restrain his temper. "If you don't tell us why you're here, we won't let you pass." The guard crossed his arms and laughed wildly. But very quickly, his smile froze in the next second. Chapter 1888. Relying on their status on Penglai, the Peng family was so powerful that even the ancient city guards had been assimilated. They were fierce, chivalrous, and extremely arrogant. It could be seen from their attitude toward outsiders that the carriage Wang Ling and the others were in had a clear 9-star imperial family symbol, symbolizing that the people in the carriage were direct descendants of some great emperor. Even so, this group of assimilated ancient city guards didn't take them seriously. They were completely unreasonable and looked down on this group of great emperors. Such an arrogant attitude undoubtedly made the Great East Sovereign very angry. He instinctively wanted to slap this guard in the face. But just as he raised his hand, Wang Ying forcibly controlled his body and held him down. Just use your aura to intimidate them. If you slap them, this guard will die. It won't be good for our subsequent plans. As soon as he finished speaking, his aura was transmitted at the same time. Wang Ying had only released a little spiritual pressure, but the expressions of this group of ancient city guards instantly changed dramatically, and they could no longer laugh. As if they had been petrified, they stood where they were and didn't dare move at all. They're done. Their realm will stop here for the rest of their lives, and they won't advance any further, Monk Jin Deng said at that moment, having seen some clues. This wasn't just an ordinary aura deterrence. At the same time, some nomological curses had been added to make these arrogant ancient city guards receive the most terrifying punishment as a cultivator. To them, this was a punishment that was far more miserable than death. Even so, East Great Emperor was still depressed. These people eat the public grain of our 4 territories, but they betray their master for glory. They really can't be punished. It was hard to imagine that East Great Emperor, who had always been gentle and kind among the 4 emperors, could be so furious. If the other emperors hadn't been possessed by outsiders, it was likely that these ancient city guards would have died as well. As if expecting this reaction from East Great Emperor, Wang Ying said indifferently, "The environment can change people. Vanity, privilege, and everything that can tarnish the human heart may make these people think that they are superior to others, and thus completely forget that they are just dust in this world." Everyone sank into deep thought at Wang Ying's words, and even Wang Ling was a little surprised. He had never thought that his own shadow could actually think so deeply. Sometimes, he would think about what the essence of cultivation was, and occasionally weave a few golden sentences in his mind. However, he had never shared these words with anyone else. This was because he realized that there were too few people who could truly understand him, or rather, they simply didn't exist. The loneliness of being at the top could only be described as, "It's too cold at the top." The East Great Emperor tried hard to calm himself down. In the end, he listened to Wang Ying's words obediently and did not kill these ancient city guards in front of him. Of course, although Wang Ying's curse was real, it didn't give the ancient city guards a chance. If they can come to their senses in this life and rein in the horse before the precipice, this curse will naturally be lifted. Unfortunately, they've already sunk too deep. Wang Ying sighed. What on earth did the Peng family instill in them? Lu Qingyi looked at these petrified ancient city guards and felt it was a great pity. They had cultivated for more than 1,000 years, and had originally been chosen to guard an ancient city in a central region. If they could wait until the handover and return to their respective armies, they would definitely have boundless prospects in the future. But who would have thought that these people would choose to court death on this day? It could only be said that this was a kind of destiny. A number of carriages bearing the mark of the 9-star imperial family finally landed outside Penglai City. The spirit light from the Peng family's bejeweled main residence reached the sky even through the city walls. Looking down from the sky, this golden residence had been shocking, and now that they saw it face to face, they felt the Peng family's domineering nature even more. Wang Ling and the others wanted to park the carriages directly in front of the Peng family's main residence, but they couldn't stop on such a wide street. It was only when they approached Penglai City that they noticed the luxurious carriages and all kinds of divine beasts lined up in an orderly manner in front of the Peng family's main residence. What's going on? There's a traffic jam in the eternal world? In the Pegasus carriage, Lotus Sun frowned. I'll go and ask. Zhang Zide immediately got out of the carriage and used the spirit stones he had prepared as a tip. He casually grabbed a passing rogue cultivator and asked him. After receiving a large sum of money for the inquiry, the rogue cultivator's unhappy expression at being stopped instantly smoothed out. It's like this, these carriages are all here to propose marriage. I don't think you're also here to propose marriage, are you? So many to propose marriage? Everyone was astonished. This was the information they had received after integrating the intelligence network of the 4 emperors, and was probably first-hand information. But no one would have thought that the marriage proposals had actually already begun. Furthermore, there was a long line in front of the Peng family's main residence. Zhang Zide instantly understood. The only possibility was that the Peng family had spread the news locally and started to openly recruit people. But this made things completely different. No matter how big the local families on Penglai were, they couldn't be as big as the Peng family, so the son-in-law they found definitely couldn't compare to the Peng family in terms of family background. At most, he would be a live-in son-in-law. Furthermore, he wouldn't be the Dragon King's live-in son-in-law. This astonished everyone on Wang Ling's side. This Peng Basin was the daughter of the Peng family. Why would she find a live-in son-in-law who didn't match their family background? How anxious was she to get herself married off? Miss Peng is a very eccentric person, and this marriage proposal was her idea to begin with. Lord Peng especially dotes on her, so Miss Peng practically handles everything herself. This passerby rogue cultivator looked like he was watching a melon. If Miss Peng takes a fancy to anyone, whether it's an official marriage or a live-in son-in-law, it's a supreme honor. Once you're on the Peng family's big boat, you definitely won't lack cultivation resources in the future. What else do you know? Zhang Zide asked as he gave him another bag of spirit stones. The passerby rogue cultivator nodded with a satisfied expression. I advise you to leave. This Miss Peng is a very lustful person. Although it'll be very touching to be on the Peng family's boat, she might overdraw her kidneys. Overdraw her kidneys? Lustful? Why do you think so? Because I heard that Miss Peng isn't just going to marry a live-in son-in-law today. This long line is to recruit a harem for herself. How many have you chosen so far? Not yet, because the requirements are too high. The passerby rogue cultivator sighed. I was just watching the fun. There was a guy called Kushwan who was rejected by Miss Peng. She said that his kidneys weren't good. Chapter 1889. As it turned out, it wasn't as easy to maintain order nowadays as the internet made it out to be. Even choosing a son-in-law had to be done according to the basic rules. The eldest daughter of the Peng family was a pearl in the palm of the Peng family's hand. Although grandfather Peng had given the right to choose his future son-in-law to eldest Miss Peng, he had certainly given her the lowest standards. According to that itinerant cultivator, the old man had formulated very strict regulations on the virtues of a son-in-law. Take the initiative to inform your wife or family members of any cultivation activities or cultivation gatherings, and apply no later than sunset. Under no circumstances are you allowed to drink or indulge in alcohol. If you meet someone who urges you to drink, you must immediately stay away from them, break off relations with them, and never associate with them again. If necessary, you can directly draw your sword and kill them. In public, under no circumstances are you allowed to eat anything that smells too strong or to smoke. You must remain quiet and constantly remind yourself that you are a quiet and handsome man. You must not wear revealing clothes. You can't wear a vest or sleeveless shirt, or wear shorts that go above your knees, and you can't go bare-chested. At the same time, you should always pay attention to your personal appearance at home. You must walk properly. When you walk, your back must be straight and your gaze forward, and your eyes must be firm and aboveboard. You mustn't sneak a peek at other women, and you must maintain a kind of awe-inspiring righteousness at all times. Your steps must be just right, and can't be outward or inward. Before you are officially married, you are absolutely not allowed to have sex before marriage. Furthermore, you are not allowed to be alone with the opposite sex or spend the night outside, not even if it's necessary for business. Because business in the cultivation world requires dual cultivation. You must report to your wife in advance before you buy anything worth more than 500 mixed spirit stones. If you don't have money, you can ask your wife, and she will provide you with a loan depending on the situation. The annualized rate depends on the situation and can range from 8% to 999%. If the person is good-looking and meets all the other requirements, you can ignore all the above male virtues regulations. Seeing this, everyone couldn't help sucking in breaths of cold air and sighing heavily. No one thought that this eldest Miss Peng's father would actually be so honest. Good heavens, it's too hard to ask for direct conditions. I can't do it even if I'm so well behaved. As someone who already had a partner, Wang Jin felt very sad about this. He even felt that this journey of eternity was already a very bad example for Lu Qingyi. What if Lu Qingyi imitated these men's ethics rules after he went back and made a new version of modern cultivation men's ethics rules for him? He really wouldn't be able to live on then. Seeing Wang Zhen's fearful expression, Lu Qingyi was very satisfied. Given her outstanding training skills, even if she didn't use these rules to restrain Wang Zhen, he would definitely be a good man who abided by male ethics. The most important reason was that Wang Zhen was timid. To put it bluntly, he didn't have the courage to challenge his wife's bottom line. The most, he was that out that out that out that out to him out to him, and out to out. To this out that this to the. After standing there in a daze for a long while, he hurriedly drove his spirit sword away. This was too frightening. Even with his experience, he had never seen two women so intimate in the eternal world. Thus, this itinerant cultivator left as if he was fleeing. In the process, he seemed to think of something embarrassing, and he couldn't help blushing. These were two women. It turned out that two women could do it? He felt that he was too inexperienced. In contrast, he felt that his friend, who had trained his little female cat to cultivate into a beautiful human girl and then married him, was a lot more normal. As if they could hear this cultivator's thoughts, the corners of Wang Ling's and Wang Ying's mouths twitched at the same time. Marrying a female cat that he had trained into a beautiful human girl, this was obviously even more outrageous. At that moment, Wang Ling's heart was crumbling. Looking at the long queue in front of him, he couldn't help feeling a deep sense of despair. At this rate, the sun would be setting by the time they arrived. Furthermore, it seemed that the Peng family's headquarters had come up with a limit on numbers, which was to say that they might not even get a chance to propose today. Fortunately, because of Zhang Zipei, East Great Emperor now had a lot of funds at his disposal. As long as he had enough money, he could buy the number of the person in front of him. "Brother, our master is in a hurry. I wonder if you can be magnanimous?" Zhang Zipei asked on his behalf with a smile on his face. The person in front of them was also a noble young master. He looked elegant and seemed to be easy to talk to. However, in the eyes of the Peng family's headquarters, he was nothing more than a live-in son-in-law. "Who are you? You want to cut the line?" "I won't cut the line for free, I'll pay you. As long as you let us swap places, we're willing to pay you 500,000 Chaos Spirit Stones as a token of our gratitude," Zhang Zipei said, holding out a palm. The person in the carriage seemed to have heard Zhang Zipei's voice, and after hesitating for a moment, he decided to swap places. After all, whether or not he could become a live-in son-in-law was still a question, but 500,000 Chaos Spirit Stones was real money. After swapping places with satisfaction, the elegant young master in the carriage smiled at Wang Ling's carriage. "Brother, let me give you a piece of advice. Money is useless. If this Miss Peng doesn't like you, you'll become a live-in son-in-law at most. How many people have been rejected before you? I think Miss Peng's standards are too high, and normal people won't like her. Then why did you come to line up?" Zhang Zipei snickered. The young master smiled. "Just think of it as a lottery ticket. What if I win? That's endless glory and wealth. This Peng family's headquarters has quite a background now. Everyone says that old Master Peng will be the future 5th emperor." As soon as he said this, the elegant young master's expression changed dramatically as he suddenly felt a huge chill coming from the carriage in front of him. It was the pressure of East Great Emperor, which immediately scared the elegant young master into silence, and he didn't dare speak at all. Just like that, Zhang Zipei spent money to buy places, and soon led Wang Ling, Lotus Sun and the others to the main gate of the Peng family's headquarters. A steward of the Peng family's headquarters stepped forward. He was dressed in luxurious silk clothes, and even the patterns on them were embroidered with gold. When he saw Wang Ling and Lotus Sun's convoy, he didn't care about the 9-star imperial family emblem at all, and asked in a lazy and arrogant tone, "Who are you? Tell me your name." Chapter 1890. Wang Ling could see that the pattern on this steward's body wasn't from the eternal world, but was clearly the mark of the old world. At the bottom of the pattern was a surging wave woven from golden immortals and blue silk threads. Several tentacles from the old world poked out of the surface of the sea in a strange, beautiful arc. Wang Ling was all too familiar with these tentacles from the old world, because not long ago, he had hunted down a few tentacle-like creatures from Dopey from the old world for newborn Wang Yuan to satisfy her hunger. Such unbridled behavior was enough to show how overbearing and rampant the Peng family was on Penglai. There was only a bit of time left before the sun completely set. Wang Ling, Lotus Sun and the others had bribed everyone along the way to make it to the last round of interviews for the day. Looking at the time, a lot of people knew that they were the last group of people for the day. But the people behind them didn't immediately disperse, even though they knew that they wouldn't be able to make it today. The young talents who had come to propose got out of their cars one after another, intending to join in on the fun. After all, the last person to be interviewed was a nouveau riche who had bribed his way to the front with money. A lot of people wanted to see the Peng family pour cold water on this nouveau riche. There was a huge gap between the rich and the poor in the eternal world, but there were still plenty of rich people. Given the Peng family's status on Penglai, ordinary nouveau riche definitely wouldn't be interested in them. So when Wang Ling and the others arrived, this steward's expression didn't look good. He had been observing Wang Ling and the others' motorcade for a long time. They had actually bribed their way here with money? Just as the housekeeper of the Peng family revealed a look of disdain, Zhang Zibai took a step forward and took out a jade box from his sleeve. He pretended to respectfully open the jade box and handed it to the housekeeper with both hands. "Hello, housekeeper. My young master is here to propose marriage and hopes that housekeeper can lead the way. This is a small token of my appreciation. I hope you won't mind." "Heh." The steward's disdain didn't diminish, and he smiled contemptuously. Heh, did they think his Peng family was a vegetarian? He hated this kind of nouveau riche the most. He was the dignified steward of the Peng family, and he was a somewhat famous figure on Penglai who didn't care how many rich people there were. A mere extraterrestrial nouveau riche actually dared to stand in front of him. Wait. This was... At first, he did not look carefully at the contents of the box. After a glance, he realized that it was an elixir, and it was no ordinary elixir. When the elixir in the jade box emitted a dazzling luster, the Peng clan's general manager's hand speed was extremely fast. He immediately closed the lid of the jade box. This alertness was actually because he didn't want the treasures and pills in the box to be seen by other busybodies. As the steward of the Peng family, his eyes were extremely sharp. He clearly knew that this was an ancestral Dao pill. This was a rare medicinal pill for breaking through to the Dao Father realm. Only great emperors could refine it. In reality, among the people who came to propose today, there were indeed many who came in the name of the 3-star, 6-star, or 9-star imperial family. However, it was the first time that the Peng family's chief steward had seen someone who used the Dao ancestor pill as a stepping stone. Although he didn't like this nouveau riche in front of him, he couldn't help feeling a little hesitant in the face of this Dao ancestor pill. For him, this kind of greeting gift was like giving him a pillow when he was sleepy. He had been stuck at the Dao God realm for a long time, and was just a step away from breaking through to Dao ancestor. However, he had always lacked comprehension. If he didn't break through with external help, he was afraid that his realm would stop here for the rest of his life. In the next moment, his expression softened a little as he personally accepted the jade box and stepped aside. "Young master, you're too polite. I will kindly accept this gift. Please come in, young master, but there are still a few more tests. If you can pass all of them, you can officially marry my family's young lady. If you can't, young master, you can consider becoming a son-in-law or directly leave." Understood. Inside the carriage, Lotus Sun took a deep breath and stepped out of the exclusive royal carriage of the 9-star imperial family under everyone's gazes. To tell the truth, she didn't feel any stage fright. Before she had fallen in love with Wang Ling and learned to keep a low profile, she had once enjoyed being the center of attention. But now, it could only be said that she had returned to her old profession. As the future young master of Huagua Water Curtain Group, she had an innate ability to control the overall situation and confidence. This kind of bearing couldn't be considered ordinary. Coupled with the exquisite makeup that Lu Qingyi and Yu Yueqing had put on Lotus Sun, her immortal aptitude was already enough to stun everyone present. Which territory is this imperial family from? How come I've never seen this person before? Look at the patterns on his body, which combine the styles of the 4 territories. He definitely has an extraordinary background. Maybe he's favored by all 4 emperors at the same time. My God, there's someone like this in the world? The busybodies on the street who had joined in on the fun immediately started talking among themselves. To be honest, when he saw Lotus Sun in person, even the director of the Pring family was stunned for a moment. He believed himself to be very knowledgeable and knew almost all the famous families in the 4 regions, but he didn't remember such a person at all. To have the patterns of the 4 territories directly tattooed on the same robe, this alone was enough to prove that this person's identity was no small matter. Before young master enters, please tell me who you are. My name is Wang Rongxia, Lotus Sun answered without hesitation. Her identity was completely fake and had been created by the core members of the battle sect who had impersonated the 4 emperors, so everything about this fake identity had been done flawlessly. Lotus Sun had already thought of a fake name. This was made up of the name of the character she had impersonated, Xia Xinyan, the homonym of her own name, and the surname of the person she liked. Wang Rongxia. The director of the Pring family carefully chewed on this name and began to do a carpet search in his mind, but it was as if he had lost his memory and couldn't remember anything. No matter how much he rummaged through the memories of those prestigious families, he couldn't find such a person. Of course, he also began to suspect that Lotus Sun was a fake identity. But even if it was a fake identity, the price to pay was a little too high. A Dao ancestor pill as a stepping stone, what kind of wealth was this? It didn't seem fake at all. Thus, the steward of the Pring family finally didn't stop her and welcomed her in. So it's young master Wang Rongxia. Please come in, young master. In any case, there were still a few more tests, and he didn't think Lotus Sun would be able to pass them. The person in charge of the first test was a middle-aged man who looked like a scholar. He sat in front of a table and propped up his chin with his fingers crossed as he looked at Lotus Sunday. Sweeping a glance at the chair in front of the table, he smiled meaningfully. Young master, please take a seat. If you want to marry my family's young miss, the first test is a discussion of Dao. Okay. Lotus Sun nodded. Back in the carriage, East Great Emperor had already guessed this part. The middle-aged man nodded, then began to ask, there are countless paths of cultivation. May I ask, young master, how should you find your own path? Lotus Sun thought for a moment, then answered, there are no paths in this world, but when there are people, there are paths. As soon as she said this, the whole audience burst into thunderous applause. The middle-aged man was clearly stunned when he heard this. Good answer, young master. Then may I ask, if someone is unable to break through after a long time and can't feel any hope, what would you think? Hope is attached to existence. With existence, there is hope, and with hope, there is light. Good, easy to understand. The middle-aged man was already completely stupefied. He scratched his head, then continued to ask, may I ask, young master, how do you understand life and death? Lotus Sun, dead life has already decayed. I am very happy with this decay, because I know that it isn't empty. The middle-aged man was shocked. Young master is so young, how can you say such a thing? Lotus Sun smiled. Is this also a question? The middle-aged man shook his head. No, it's just a personal question. Young master, you don't have to answer. Lotus Sun said, it's all because my master taught me well. The middle-aged man, may I ask, who is young master's master? Which sect is he from? Lotus Sun smiled. I don't belong to any sect, and people call me Brother Sun. Chapter 1891. Wednesday, January 7th. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun didn't return all night and didn't report to school the next day, which attracted the attention of the two families. Sun Yuan paced around anxiously. He only had one granddaughter, but she disappeared without a trace. Most importantly, as far as Sunny Yuan knew, Lotus Sun had always been extremely obedient and well-behaved, so there was no way she would disappear for no reason. Now that she had disappeared, however, Sunny Yuan began to feel a strong sense of crisis. The incident with the Shadow Stream killers last year was still vivid in his mind as if it had happened yesterday. His heart was a mess and he didn't know what to do at the moment. He had called Ajwa and found that he had also disappeared. Using his connections, he had finally found grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Senior Immortal, I only have one granddaughter. You have to tell me the truth. Do you really not know where she went? Sunny Yuan paced back and forth in front of grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's desk in the head of BattleSec's office with his hands clasped behind his back. He was sweating profusely because of his ancestral imagination genes, and he was thinking of a lot of terrible things. Don't worry, old man, I've already sent people to look for her. Miss Sun is naturally safe and sound, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said reassuringly. In fact, he was also privy to this matter. How could he, as the head of BattleSec, not know where so many core members had been mobilized? As for why they hadn't returned overnight, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's guess was that they might have run into some trouble, so he had called Wang Ling last night and realized that he couldn't get through to him. Thus, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's guess was that Wang Ling had to be with this group of people on a similar mission. So with Wang Ling around, there was no need to panic at all. It was only a matter of time before they were dealt with. They just needed to be patient and wait for them to reply on their own. Senior Immortal, do you have any basis for this? My Rong isn't even at the Golden Core stage. In this big world, it's too easy for Foundation establishment cultivators to get into accidents. If someone bullies her, or... Just as Sunny Yuan was thinking of something even more terrifying, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hurriedly interrupted him. Old man, don't think too much, he sighed in his heart. It was only because Old Man Sun didn't know Lotus Sun's true battle strength that there were a lot of things that he couldn't explain clearly. A Foundation establishment cultivator was being bullied? Of course I don't exist. Your granddaughter has Ling Jinren's backing. It's already good enough that she doesn't bully others. This was the #1 Foundation establishment stage cultivator on Earth. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could still vividly remember how he had cut down the old god of the god race with one slash back then. Back then, it hadn't even reached the level of 9 cores Mysterious Sea. Now, the Mysterious Sea had 9 Heaven's Path magic cubes fused into it. It was practically unstoppable. However, when he answered the phone earlier, he had already expected that Grandpa Sun would do this, so he had already thought of a way to comfort him. After fiddling with it for a bit, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal took something out of his sleeve. It was a Dao talisman that contained enormous spirit power, and Sunny Yuan's eyes immediately lit up. This is Death Substitute Talisman. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. Actually, this was the surplus that Wang Ling had asked the 2 Life and Death Heavenly Dao brothers to set up last time. It was just that he was now using it as an excuse to comfort someone. He said, I came across this by chance and wanted to give it to Miss Sun as a gift. But Miss Sun wouldn't accept it, so I thought of a way to secretly bind it to her. In other words, the owner of this Death Substitute Talisman is Miss Sunday. The Death Substitute Talisman hasn't been activated yet, which proves that Miss Sun is definitely safe. We just need to increase our search and wait for a reply. Hearing this, Sunny Yuan finally let out a long sigh of relief. That's good. That's good. His nerves eased, and he even forgot to ask about the true origin of this Death Substitute Talisman. After all, it was almost impossible to find anyone in this world who had the ability to draw this kind of Dao talisman. Looking at Sunny Yuan's relieved expression, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had mixed feelings in his heart. Looking up at the sky, he felt that Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch, whom he had sent out earlier, should already have news from Wang Ling. As a real clone, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's thoughts and consciousness were completely independent, but he could still sense the original body. Thus, he had very easily found the apartment building where Li Xian lived, and from the security guard at the entrance, he had more or less guessed what had happened. Because this apartment building was now part of Huagua Water Curtain Group's property, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's first guess was that Wang Ling and Lotus Sun had definitely come here to investigate this Li Xian, and had definitely found something in the apartment building. Choosing a small, secluded corner near the apartment building, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch enlarged his spiritual senses, and relying on his amazing senses, he used a kind of teleportation technique to accurately pinpoint Wang Ling's location. At the same time, the three members of the Eternal Imperial family, the Skeleton Prince, the Lion Man and Meng Lioli, who had been standing guard next to Wang Ling, were all shocked. After a moment of embarrassment, Meng Lioli looked at Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch, who looked very much like Wang Ling, and asked with a look of sudden realization, "You're Ling Jinren's clone? No, you look more like a real clone." As a member of the Eternal Imperial family, Meng Lioli had a certain level of knowledge. Seeing that these three people were concentrating on standing guard for Wang Ling, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch relaxed a little. He could tell that these three people didn't have any ill intentions, otherwise they would have already attacked him the moment he landed. "I understand, you must be worried because you couldn't find Ling Jinren, right? Don't worry, Ling Jinren is fine. He just followed the path of this mysterious character into the world it's in." The Lion Man's rough voice rang out. They were truly very serious as they worked exceptionally hard to protect Wang Ling, abiding by their duty as guards. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch couldn't help but laugh at their hard work. But now that they had finally found Wang Ling's whereabouts, he heaved a long sigh of relief. He immediately took out his phone, intending to report back. The text had been sent to grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Father Wang and Wang Muyu. "I found Ling Ling. I knew this kid would be fine," Father Wang said after looking at his phone. "Then what did the school teacher say?" Mother Wang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "This child, he didn't even tell us that he wasn't coming back tonight. Even if he's trying to safeguard world peace, he should at least have sent a text. He probably ran into some kind of trouble and couldn't keep track of the time." "But it's fine," Father Wang said. "If there really is a problem, our Anwan can go and help at any time." "Yeah." On the other side, Wang Nuan had already put on a diaper and was ready to go. Chapter 1892. Wang Muyu had played his part these days and obeyed all orders. He just wanted to see Wang Ling and Lotus Sun as soon as possible. In the end, the days that he had been longing for passed by one after another, and he hadn't expected them to stand him up again in the end. He wasn't an insensible child, and immediately knew that Wang Ling and Lotus Sun had probably run into some trouble. When he thought of the extremely realistic dream he had a few days ago, his rainbow dragon heart immediately tensed up. The dragon clan's prophetic dreams might not be as accurate as Wang Ling's, but the chances of them hitting the mark weren't low either. He dreamed of someone stabbing Wang Ling in the back. A white knife went in and a red knife came out, directly piercing Wang Ling's heart from behind, and then stirring in his chest in a strange spiral. Wang Muyu had been startled awake by this nightmare, drenched in sweat. He was well aware that this was a prophecy, and that Wang Ling was about to be assassinated. Fortunately, he had received a reply from Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch. He knew that his father wasn't acting strangely, it was just that he might be entangled in some troublesome matter, and would need some time before he could extricate himself. Wang Muyu breathed a sigh of relief and looked out of the window. In the huge Sun family's castle and the bedroom that was the size of several living rooms, he was the only one here. The feeling of longing and loneliness surged in his heart in an instant. The high-tech toys and all kinds of imported snacks and drinks which Old Man Sun had meticulously prepared in the bedroom had all become tasteless at that moment. The maids in the Sun family's castle all had standard professional smiles. Wang Muyu could see that no matter what kind of question he asked, the other party had a standard set of words to answer, making it impossible for him to vent his anger on this group of people. Wang Muyu rang the bell, and very quickly, a maid pushed open the door and came in. Looking steadily out the window, he asked, "When will Grandpa Sun be back?" The maid thought for a moment, then replied patiently, "Young Master Muyu, don't worry. Old Master may or may not be on his way back. We can only find out after a few hours or even longer when the gate of the castle is pushed open." Wang Muyu, "Sure enough, The maid's reply was the same as if she hadn't said anything. Although he'd long since figured out the language system of this group of servants, Wang Muyu's heart was still on the verge of collapse. All he needed to know was whether or not he would be back, or when he would be back. In the end, this group of people gave him the answer of Schrodinger's cat. Even their replies were filled with philosophical thoughts. "I'm going out." Wang Muyu sighed. He couldn't wait any longer and prepared to leave. "Young Master Muyu, it is very dangerous for you to go out now. It was already so late. Why don't I just wait here obediently? If you go out?" Just when the maid wanted to continue arguing with him, Wang Muyu interrupted her bluntly. "Okay, then I'll listen to you. I won't go out." "That's good." The maid nodded in satisfaction and left the bedroom. Wang Muyu knew that he wouldn't be able to leave if he applied normally, so he could only trick the maid. Now that he knew Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch's location, his current plan was to leave a clone in the Sun family's ancient castle so that his real body could go out and meet up with Wang Ling. In the end, just as he was about to move out, a familiar and piercingly cold aura pierced through the air outside the Sun family's ancient castle, and Wang Muyu was almost instantly on high alert. He couldn't retract the 7-colored dragon horns on his head, and under the sudden pressure, they instantly grew out from the 2 horns on his forehead. They glowed with prismatic colors like colored glass, and were a beautiful fluorescent color in the night, which was especially eye-catching. "It's you." Wang Muyu's eyes were vigilant as he stared in a certain direction outside the window. A figure with dragon wings spread out on his back landed in the moonlight, as if he had been teleported here. The man wore familiar diamond gloves and held a black umbrella, and there was a domineering look in his eyes. Wang Muyu hadn't expected Clear Swamp to choose this time to appear again. The matter with the holy race hadn't been fully resolved, and these resurrected dragon descendants had come to pick a fight again. Wang Muyu was a little annoyed, but the main reason was that his trip had been blocked. He wanted to see Wang Ling, but had been stopped at this time. Crossing his arms, Clear Swamp smiled coldly in the air. "Every debt has a debtor. The other people in this castle have nothing to do with me. As long as you come with me, it's fine. Do you still want to get beaten up?" Wang Muyu stared at Clear Swamp. "You're no match for me on your own. You haven't fully matured yet. As long as that person isn't here, it's hard to say who will emerge victorious." Clear Swamp smiled. It was only then that Wang Muyu realized with a start that this had actually been a plan from the very beginning. Clear Swamp and his group had been taking advantage of the time difference to strike while Wang Ling, Lotus Sun and the other core members of Battle Sect were in the mysterious text's world. Their real target had been him from the very beginning. It was just that they had been quiet for a long time, which was unexpected. It could only be said that Baiji's personality had changed, and he really wasn't the Baiji of the past. Such a sophisticated plan required a lot of patience. In the past, Baiji had been an impatient person who had always thought that he was invincible and would have no problem dealing with Wang Ling. In the end, every time he got anxious, he would be beaten up. Baiji, on the other hand, had continued to grow after repeated failures and had become an outstanding strategist. This was indeed a little unexpected. At this moment, Wang Muyu's expression became serious. He stared at Jing Zhe, who was hovering in the void, and felt that the other party had become stronger than when he first saw him. It was a change that was close to being reborn. It had not been a long time. According to the human cultivation world, it had not even been a month. Yet, it had grown to such an extent. But Wang Muyu didn't panic. Clear Swamp had indeed become stronger, but while it looked like he had been playing around, he had actually been going through all kinds of hard training. "It looks like you don't want to go with me, so I'll have to take you back by force." In the next second, Clear Swamp attacked. He showed no mercy as he attacked with lightning. With a snap of his fingers, thunder surged in the sky, and tens of thousands of lightning bolts turned into a cage that enveloped Wang Muyu. "Umph!" Wang Muyu snorted. He opened the window and his little body directly jumped out. In the next moment, the magnificent rainbow dragon descendant behind him spread out to form an impenetrable barrier in front of him. The moment the electric cage approached, Wang Muyu directly flapped his dragon wings and smashed it to pieces. He was a master of the 10,000 dragon gene. Wang Muyu thought that Clear Swamp was indulging in fantasy if he thought that this electric cage could trap him. But his expression didn't relax from beginning to end. Looking at Clear Swamp's calm expression, he felt that the other party had come prepared, and there might be even more unexpected things waiting for him. What should I do? Should I look for Auntie Nuan? That was what Wang Muyu thought at that moment. Chapter 1893. At the same time, in Li Xian's apartment, the three members of the royal family suddenly saw Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch look in one direction with a vigilant expression. Protecting Wang Muyu was part of Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's responsibility. He had sensed that something was wrong with Wang Muyu, which was why he was so vigilant. But for a real clone, the safety of the main body was always the top priority. Based on the primary and secondary law, he couldn't leave Wang Ling's side now. Even though Wang Ling had 3 guardians of the eternal imperial family, he still didn't feel that this was stable enough. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch, if you have something to do, you can go first. We're here, the skeleton prince volunteered. However, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's indifferent reply was, even with the 3 of you, there's no guarantee that his lord will be safe. The 3 of us are the eternal imperial family. I know. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch nodded with a smile. But you're still too weak. The skeleton prince and the other 2 felt their hearts wrench when they heard this. They had kindly offered to stand guard here, but in the end, they had been doused with cold water. This was something they had never expected. In fact, it wasn't that Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch looked down on these 3 eternal imperial family members, but had come to this conclusion based on the current situation and repeated comparisons. If they were dealing with an ordinary eternal being, leaving 3 eternal imperial family members alive would definitely be enough. But now that the opponent was from the Dragon Clan, everything was uncertain. The reason why Wang Ling hadn't killed Baizhi earlier was also part of his plan, and Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch was also aware of this plan. Baizhi was now particularly cautious and wouldn't act rashly. Once the other side launched a large-scale attack, he would definitely reveal all his trump cards. In Wang Ling's eyes, the daily harassment was already child's play. Baizhi also knew that this method wouldn't be able to completely destroy Wang Ling, so both sides were now laying out a big plan. Baizhi was waiting for his trump cards to be fully prepared before launching an all-out attack. Wang Ling, on the other hand, was waiting for Baizhi to launch an all-out attack before directly catching them all in one fell swoop, not giving the other side any chance to turn the tables. Looking at the current situation, it was very clear that Wang Muyu was a very crucial element in Baizhi's overall plan. It could be seen from the repeated robberies that the other party had planned. Although he was also waiting for Baizhi to launch an all-out attack, this didn't conflict with protecting Wang Muyu, even if he wasn't used to this little guy's sudden arrival at first. But after spending so much time with him, he felt like he had a younger brother, and started to develop faint feelings that he couldn't bear to part with. Wang Muyu was too much like him, even their fondness for crispy noodle snacks was identical. As the saying went, it was hard to find a bosom friend. Based on this alone, there was no way Wang Ling would let Wang Muyu go. So now that Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch knew about the situation on Wang Muyu's side and couldn't leave, he could only send a text message to old Wang's family to ask for help. Very quickly, he received a reply text message. It was a short voice message. Using the voice-to-text function, it displayed the word "ya." This was little girl Nuan's direct reply on Father Wang's phone. Although the little girl wasn't even half a year old, she was already very familiar with smart devices. A few days ago, she had even gone online to buy the latest celebrity brand diapers for herself. When the courier delivered the diapers home, it was Wang Nuan who personally signed for them. She directly wrote the word "Nuan" on the delivery box with her foot, which horrified the courier. In his heart, he exclaimed that children nowadays were developing too fast, which made him feel a little frustrated. When he was half a year old, he didn't even know how to sit. This little girl actually knew how to shop online and sign for deliveries on her own. This was too outrageous. It's a message from Crispy Noodles. They said something happened at the Sun family's castle. Father Wang looked at Wang Nuan. The child in front of him wasn't even half a year old, but was already shouldering the heavy responsibility of saving the world. For a moment he was inexplicably moved. He picked little girl Nuan up and looked at her lovingly. Nuan, don't force yourself too much. Are you too tired? Wang Nuan shook her head at lightning speed. Although she was only half a year old, she already understood the principle that with great power came great responsibility. As his younger sister, she could directly feel how good he was to her. It was precisely because of this that now that her big brother was in trouble, she naturally had to help him as his younger sister. But once he left, Father Wang and Mother Wang's safety would be unguaranteed. So before she officially left, Wang Nuan left her shadow behind and hid it under the sofa in old Wang's house. Dragon breath filled the sky as the huge shadow of a dragon soared through the sky. Dozens of lightning dragons coiled high in the sky, and dark clouds covered the sky as if they were about to collapse. This was the power of Pure Zay's core world. Wang Muyu was well aware that he had already fallen into another of Pure Zay's cages, but this was of his own accord. Because it was better than hurting innocent people. As for Jing Zay, he fulfilled his promise. He didn't attack the innocent and only targeted him. Wang Muyu knew that this was a kind of arrogance that stemmed from being a descendant of the dragon clan. Wang Muyu still had a trace of hope for the lightning dragon. He believed that the lightning dragon had a sense of justice and was just being used. At that moment in the core world, Pure Zay was the ruler and god of this world, and possessed an even more powerful sense of oppression. Wang Muyu felt that it would be very difficult to persuade such a god with words. So I have no choice but to beat you into submission? At that moment, Wang Muyu sighed in his heart. As Pure Zay had said, he hadn't fully matured yet, but he had improved a lot during this time. Although he had yet to experience what it felt like to fight against the pressure of the core world, he felt that since his dad could ignore the power of other people's core worlds, he could do the same. Buzz. In the blink of an eye, rainbow glass dragon breath surrounded Wang Ling's body, and elemental dragons of different colors hovered around him. Colorful dragon wings spread out at that moment, and with a kind of light, Wang Ling looked like a beautiful splash ink painting with the charm of an ancient dragon. Wang Muyu had grown up. The dragon breath in his body was purer than when he had been born, and Pure Zay was greatly shocked by this astonishing rate of growth. Even though he didn't show it on the surface, Wang Muyu's growth made him suddenly realize why Baizha had racked his brains to snatch Wang Muyu back. At that moment he understood everything. Because Wang Muyu was the hope for the revival of the Dragon Clan. The hope for the Dragon Clan to become the overlord of the universe again. Chapter 1894. Jing Zay soared into the sky, and the power of thunder surged around him. His divine power was surging, and the pressure was oppressive. In the heyday of the Dragon Clan, a battle between two dragons was an extremely terrible thing, because it would indicate a destructive planetary war. However, in Jing Zay's inner world, with the help of the eternal moon starlight bestowed by Baizha, his entire inner world had been strengthened. It was as if a layer of tempered film had been stuck on it. No matter how turbulent the inside was, the walls of the inner world remained intact. This made Wang Muyu, who had noticed this scene at the same time, feel relieved. With such a strong inner wall, he and Jing Zay could fight without restraint. And it was obvious that Jing Zay came prepared. He did not dare to have the slightest neglect. The seven-colored glazed dragon chi was boiling all over his body, lingering around his small body, making his body appear magical and translucent. He soared into the sky and spat out seven-colored dragon flames. The amazing power of the elements directly swept in front of him, directly meeting the thunder dragon summoned by Jing Zay. At this time, Jing Zay's face did not relax in the slightest. This was a collision between psionic powers. He knew that Wang Muyu was extremely talented. He had condensed the power of 10,000 dragons in his body, had thousands of changes, and could use the abilities of every kind of dragon. This was the most terrifying thing about Wang Muyu. However, in Jing Zay's view, this was also a fatal flaw before he had completely cultivated it. No matter how many dragon abilities one had, it would be useless if they were not proficient in all of them. Obviously, Wang Muyu had also thought of this. Therefore, he had integrated a variety of elemental powers in the dragon flames at the same time, wanting to use this hodgepodge method to make up for the shortcomings. You haven't cultivated to the peak. Everything is in vain, Jing Zhe said coldly. His face was solemn. He had already developed the potential of the lightning dragon to the extreme, and was completely unafraid of the 7-colored dragon flames spewed by Wang Muyu. The powerful thunder dragon's breath formed a huge pillar of light, as if the heavens were collapsing, and directly offset the dragon flames spewed by Wang Muyu. It was a combination of a variety of dragon abilities, but it still could not compare to Jing Zhe's top-notch lightning dragon power, which made Wang Muyu unhappy. Compared to the last time, Jing Zhe had made too much progress. Even under the guidance of Baizhi, such a growth rate was amazing. At one point, it was even close to surpassing him. Wang Muyu thought that his growth potential was the best among all the dragon descendants, but he didn't expect it to be the same. Of course, putting aside talent, Jing Zhe might have used other methods to quickly raise his level. But in such a short period of time, how was it done? Wang Muyu's expression did not change. His first move had allowed him to know Jing Zhe's strength as a top-notch lightning dragon. In the next moment, he stretched out his small hand and slammed it on the ground with his palm facing down in a half-squatting posture. An explosion sounded out as the ground trembled. Numerous elemental dragons soared into the air from the ground, giving off a heaven-shaking sound as the heavens and earth started to tremble. Seeing this scene, Jing Zhe raised his eyebrows. This was too wasteful. He didn't take spiritual power consumption into consideration at all. No matter how heaven-defying a person was in modern terms, there was still a blue bar. It was impossible to use skills without limit. Thus, in a duel between top experts, consumption would be taken into account during the fight, and they would calculate the time to release the corresponding ability at the right time, thus setting the pace of the entire fight. Jing Zhe could also tell from his probing that while Wang Muyu's rich and overbearing style of play meant that this little guy had unlimited spirit energy, it was also a sign that he lacked combat experience. Let him exhaust himself and we'll definitely win. A voice from the other side of the universe rang out in Jing Zhe's mind. It was a familiar man's voice, and if Wang Ling had been present, he would have easily recognized this person. On the other side of the universe, a huge dragon the size of a star was entrenched there. Emitting holy moonlight, it issued commands from the depths of the infinite Milky Way as it remotely commanded Jing Zhe. This was a type of long-range microcontrol. Baizhi had entered the field. Jing Zhe didn't obstruct Baizhi's judgment, and instead used his own methods to provide support and assistance. In order to divert Wang Ling's attention, he had painstakingly planned this eternal chess game in order to bring Wang Muyu back. Wang Muyu was the most crucial chess piece in his plan. Today, he had chosen to let Jing Zhe take action, and he himself was personally in command. This was a determined attitude. With someone backing him, Jing Zhe naturally had nothing to fear. He opened his black umbrella, and at that moment, activated its other form. Wang Muyu's eyes were shaken. He hadn't expected this black umbrella to actually have a bow form. The moment the black umbrella opened, the ribs rearranged themselves under Jing Zhe's control to turn into a pitch-black bow and arrow wrapped in black lightning. The handle of the umbrella separated on the spot, and the hook at the end spun to perfectly latch onto the black umbrella's bowstring, directly turning it into a giant arrow. The endless power of lightning jumped and surged on the bow and arrow, as if it had absorbed the power of lightning from the entire universe. Boom! With a deafening explosion, Jing Zhe abruptly fired the bow and arrow that the black umbrella had turned into with tremendous power. Space shattered inch by inch as it whistled through the air, and even the inner wall of the core world started to shake under the tremendous impact. If it wasn't for Baizhi's support in secret, the core world might have already collapsed. With astonishing power, the giant arrow streaked across the sky with an overbearing momentum as it directly pierced through Wang Muyu and the elemental dragon that he had summoned. Then, guided by Jing Zhe's lightning, the lightning arrow returned to his hand in the blink of an eye, becoming a perpetual motion, like a bullet that would never run out of bullets. The elemental dragons that Wang Muyu had summoned came in all shapes and sizes and filled this small space. However, Jing Zhe had used his black umbrella to transform it into a bow and arrow to destroy them one by one, which was something Wang Muyu had never expected. To Wang Muyu's horror, Jing Zhe's arrow did not simply pierce through his elemental WM. Instead, it seemed to have absorbed the power of the elemental WM every time it was retracted. The power was like a stream that was constantly being superimposed on the arrow. By the time Wang Muyu saw through Jing Zhe's intentions and wanted to retrieve the elemental dragon, it was already too late. Jing Zhe, who had already dealt with the last elemental dragon, had already aimed the arrow at Wang Muyu. Then he pulled the bow fully and released it. Chapter 1895. Wang Muyu was in danger. At that moment, in East Great Emperor's body, Wang Ling was lost in thought for a moment in front of the Peng family's headquarters on planet Penglai. This was a sixth sense for danger. Even though Wang Ling was now in a world that transcended time and space, he could still sense it. Wang Muyu was now like a younger brother to Wang Ling. Although they didn't usually communicate much, there was already a faint feeling that he couldn't let go of. Wang Ling had always been very wooden and didn't understand what this feeling was, but he knew that he would never just send Wang Muyu to Baizhi. In fact, Wang Ling had already made plans for Wang Muyu's safety. After Qin Zong and Xiang Yi had taken up the positions of guest elders in Battle Sect, the first secret mission they had received was actually to protect Wang Muyu. At that moment, even if Wang Ling didn't say anything, these two strongest bodyguards could sense this danger that transcended time and space. Something happened to little brother Muyu, Qin Zong said in the team voice spell. In order not to disturb Lotus Sun's marriage proposal test, he could only talk to Xiang Yi alone. Did Baizhi make a move? Xiang asked. That's right. Judging from his combat strength, he's still a dragon descendant. Qin Zong frowned slightly. I now have reason to suspect that we were arranged to go to eternity as part of their plan. They want to take the opportunity to attack little brother Muyu. Speaking up to this point, Xiang Yi, who was playing the role of North Emperor, suddenly smiled. Unfortunately, they found the wrong person. After all, it was Wang Ling's job to protect Wang Muyu, so Qin Zong and Xiang Yi were extremely serious. As they talked, they used their own heaven-defying methods to find out most of the situation in the modern cultivation world. Yo, this kid is pretty arrogant. He even uses a bow and arrow. Interesting. When Xiang Yi saw Jing Zhe transform that black umbrella into a bow and arrow, he started to get a little excited. Qin Zong seemed to have guessed what Xiang Yi was going to do. So, you want to snipe him? I do that a lot. Xiang Yi scratched his head. And my bullets will never rust. Although it's a different timeline, I think it shouldn't be hard to snipe him. Nuan Jinren seems to be ready to make a move as well. I just need to buy some time. In the past, Xiang Yi's sniping targets were a lot of cutting-edge alien technology. But now, the target of sniping was actually a bow and arrow classified as a dragon descendant magic weapon. This new experience also made Xiang eager to try. His 9-yang divine sword was a powerful super heavy sniper rifle. He wondered what would happen if he were to face off against this bow and arrow of an immemorial dragon descendant. Thinking of this, Xiang Yi couldn't stay any longer. He quickly said to Qin Zong, "Excuse me, I'll go find a seat. Little brother Muyu is in danger. Do you want me to stand on the side? Can I give you some assistance?" Qin Zong asked. "No, I'll be back soon." Xiang Yi shook his head and said, "Boom." On the other side, Jing Zhe's diamond glove and the black umbrella that had transformed into a bow glowed at the same time. The two most powerful dragon descendant artifacts surged with endless lightning, and at the same time, they emitted a kind of holy moonlight. That was the power that Baizhi had bestowed upon him from afar. When this arrow was shot, all things were destroyed. It was as if a god had descended onto the world, as if it could pierce through everything. Wang Muyu's expression changed. He could feel the power contained in this arrow. It was truly astonishing. The moment Jing Zhe let go, the heavy lightning pressed forward like overturning seawater. It had the effect of moonlight tracking, which was an additional ability of Baiji's. No matter how Wang Muyu dodged, this arrow would still stab him. This was an arrow with a 100% hit rate. It was only then that Wang Muyu realized the difference in tactics between him and Jing Zhe. It wasn't that his strength was inferior to Jing Zhe's, but it was completely due to his lack of combat experience that caused the situation before him. More importantly, Wang Muyu hadn't expected the black umbrella in Jing Zhe's hand to have such an effect. It could transform into a bow. This was an unstoppable attack. Wang Muyu knew that he would definitely be hit, but he still put up a last-ditch struggle. Otherwise, the arrow would hit his vitals. He worked hard to calculate the power and distance of the arrow. Finally, at the moment of impact, he used the Gravity Dragon's ability to reconfigure the surrounding space's gravity to buy himself some time. However, the power of Jing Zhe's arrow was too strong. This kind of delay was like trying to put out a burning cart of firewood with a cup of water. He couldn't block the huge power of this arrow. The arrow directly pierced through his left shoulder, creating a thunderstorm. 7-colored glass dragon blood instantly gushed out, splattering all over the ground. "You can't escape." Jing Zhe's face was expressionless. He raised his hand, and lightning surged in his palm. Once again, he used the power of lightning to call back the arrow. This time, the arrow was mixed with the power of Wang Muyu's glass dragon blood, causing the arrow's ability to reach a new level. He didn't want to kill Wang Muyu, but he brought out 100% of his combat power. Jing Zhe knew very well that this was the only way he could seriously injure this talented little guy who had fused with the 10,000 dragon gene and brought him back. At this time, Wang Muyu had already been hit by his arrow. As long as the second arrow hit, Wang Muyu would no longer be able to resist. "Is the revival of the dragon race that important to you, Jing Zhe?" Wang Muyu asked. He didn't understand why Jing Zhe would pursue this so painstakingly. He didn't even hesitate to bend his knees and be driven by evil people. He felt that there was still a sense of justice in Jing Zhe's body. He shouldn't have been used by Baizhi like that. The glory of the dragon race was already history. The destruction of the dragon race had nothing to do with modern cultivators. Wang Muyu didn't understand why this beautiful era had to be destroyed. Why did they have to return to the world of hegemony, plunder, survival of the fittest, and the supremacy of strength? You've been in contact with human cultivators for too long. Naturally, you won't understand. This is also the reason why I have to bring you back, Jing Zhe said. His expression was calm, and there was no emotional fluctuation. He was like an emotionless killing machine, aiming his arrow at Wang Muyu. "You don't have any chance." After saying that, he let go of his hand. However, the moment he let go of his hand, suddenly, a brilliant silver beam of light seemed to have pierced through the end of the universe. With the aura of endless time, it pierced straight through. This was a beautiful silver bullet. Jing Zhe's pupils instantly dilated as if there was an earthquake. He had never thought that there would be such a bullet shooting at him from a strange angle. Boom! The next second, accompanied by an explosive sound, the silver bullet accurately hit the arrow wrapped in lightning and moonlight. Chapter 1896. This silver bullet had come from beyond the sky with astonishing accuracy, and it had pierced through the core world. Before it hit the arrow, it had directly punched a huge hole in the outer wall of the core world. Who could have shot a bullet with such power? Even Jing Zhe was shocked. He had never seen such powerful modern cultivation technology. In order to ensure that there were no obstacles in the way of the Dragon Clan's revival, Jing Zhe had previously assessed the level of modern human cultivation society in all aspects. This wasn't the power of any heavy sniper rifle on Earth at all. He couldn't figure out who on Earth could fire such a powerful bullet to stop him. But judging from the method, this person clearly wasn't Wang Ling. He and Baizhi had discussed Wang Ling's behavior in depth before, and this was someone who would slap someone at the slightest disagreement. Long-range sniping like this clearly wasn't Wang Ling's style. This is a bullet fired from eternity. In the boundless and deep universe, Baizhi's ethereal voice came from the planet formed by the enormous moonlight dragon's body, which rumbled like a great Tao bell in the universe, making Jingza's heart fill with awe. "Dragon Lord, don't worry, my venerable self is by your side. This bullet is just a way to stall for time." Baizhi spoke with great confidence. After all, his opponent wasn't Wang Ling, and he believed that he had a way to deal with this situation. With Baizhi's backing, Jingza was clearly much more confident. He took a deep breath and pulled back the bowstring in his hand. A second arrow was fired at Wang Muyu, but at the same time, the silver bullet from beyond the sky arrived again with great precision. With a swoosh, it cut through the air and pierced the outer wall of the core world, sharp and precise. At the same time, Baizhi also acted. From a distant position, he infused moonlight into Jingza, which turned into a bright moon behind him. In a split second, endless cold air surged forth, as if it had the mystical power to freeze the highest heavens. The silver bullet slowed down significantly under this freezing power. Wang Muyu could see that this wasn't a simple freeze, but a type of moon god ice that could completely freeze time and space. This was one of Moonlight Dragon's most powerful skills. When they first met, Baizhi hadn't shown this power. Now, however, he was able to control it. This shocked Wang Muyu. He was clearly a usurper who had nothing to do with the dragon race. He had merely taken the identity of a moonlight dragon, yet he had been able to comprehend the dragon race's ultimate technique to this level. Boom! Wang Muyu opened his mouth and spat out a glass-like flame. This was originally the dragon race's restraining technique to neutralize moon god ice. When the moon god ice met the colored glass flame, one could clearly feel the moon god ice evaporating under the colored glass flame's heat. However, Wang Muyu's proficiency with the colored glass flame was clearly not high, and one could feel that he was already working very hard to spit out fire. However, Baizhi's moon god ice was a level higher. Under the powerful freezing power, the colored glass flame's restraining effect was like trying to put out a cart of firewood with a cup of water. "Is this the pride of the dragon clan that you spoke of, Jingza?" Wang Muyu was furious. As a descendant of the dragon race, he had to watch as someone who didn't belong to the dragon clan usurped the throne. This made him very angry. He asked loudly in a childish voice. His voice seemed to emanate from his bones, and it had a natural and clean quality to it. This caused Jingza's gaze to change slightly. However, he quickly recovered his cold expression and stared at Wang Muyu. "As long as the dragon clan can rise again, it doesn't matter to me who the leader is," he replied to Wang Muyu. Everything happened in an instant. Under Baizhi's cover, the moon god ice spread along the trajectory of the second silver bullet. It froze everything around it and froze the bullet in the air. However, the next second, there was a huge explosion in the air. Jingza hadn't expected the second bullet to be a spell trap. As soon as it was stopped by an external force, it would immediately explode. A huge mushroom cloud rose up from the core world. The powerful shockwave affected the arrow's trajectory, causing Jingza's second arrow to miss. "I knew it would be like this." In the distance, Xiang Yi sneered. He held the 9-yang divine sword in his hand, and his expression relaxed. His mission had been completed. After all, he was in the past, and it was too difficult to snipe across time and space. It would be better to leave the rest to spiritual Master Nuan. After the spirit explosion, Jingza and Baizhi waited in place for a while. The third bullet that had traveled across time did not arrive. Baizhi knew clearly that the number of bullets in this time was limited. The third bullet would not arrive in a short time. "It seems that no one will stop us anymore." He sighed and gave Jingza the next order. Now was the best time to capture Wang Muyu. Jingza nodded slightly. He called back the arrow and put his hand on the bowstring again. However, unlike before, there seemed to be an artifact tied to the arrow's head. It was a giant sealing net called the 10,000 scale dragon net. It was a magic artifact that Baizhi had specially created to imprison Wang Muyu. It was made from tens of thousands of dragon scales, and the moment it appeared, it produced an incomparably dazzling divine light. This net was also a dragon descendant magic artifact, and it was at the light level. In order to capture Wang Muyu, Baizhi had definitely gone to great lengths. This was the last attack, and unless Wang Ling came in person, Jingza felt that no one could stop it. Blood seeped from the corner of Wang Muyu's mouth. He hadn't given up and was releasing the last of his dragon chi to resist. However, with the 10,000 scale dragon net here, it was useless no matter what he did. Another arrow. And it was an arrow with the 10,000 scale dragon net. At the same time, from an extremely far distance, Wang Ling's gaze fell on the first scene at the same time. But he didn't make a move, because he knew very well that Jingza's arrow would be stopped. With a puff, a green light flew down from the distance like an aurora and directly resisted the power of the two dragon descendant magic artifacts, the arrow and the 10,000 scale dragon net. Damn it, why is there another one? Jingza was a little impatient. One person after another jumped out to stop him, which made him extremely annoyed. Then he calmed down and saw clearly what was stopping his two dragon descendant magic artifacts. He was shocked, because it turned out to be a green blade of grass. Is this a sword spirit? In a trance, Jingza frowned, feeling like he had seen this familiar scene before. In the next second, a small body broke through the air and directly smashed through the outer wall of the inner world with its diaper-covered butt, forcing its way in. He looked at the baby girl who had suddenly barged in. At that moment, Jingza was horrified. Chapter 1897. The moment Leng Ming and Wang Nuan arrived, Jingza cursed in his heart, because in just a few short minutes, the outer walls of his inner world had already been broken through one after another. If it wasn't for the eternal moon starlight, which had a certain self-healing effect, the outer walls of his inner world would already be riddled with holes. Wang Nuan appeared. Her small body contained a tremendous amount of spirit power, and Jingza was completely taken aback. It wasn't that he and Baizhi had forgotten this. They had already seen how terrifying this little girl was. It was just that she was too young, and they had thought that even if Wang Nuan took action, they would be able to handle her. But now, Baizhi and Jingza realized that they had still underestimated this little girl's ability to grow. This terrifying little girl's aura was too ferocious. She wasn't even half a year old, but she was like a prehistoric beast. Every day, her body underwent earth-shattering changes. What would happen if she grew up? Thus, in that instant, Baizhi had the feeling that even if Wang Ling was now trapped in the eternal world, the fear of being at the mercy of the old Wang family came back to haunt him. But he refused to admit it, and thought that the person he was facing was just a baby who was nothing to be afraid of. He immediately ordered Jingza, "Catch Wang Muyu and kill her." Seeing a tiny baby body standing in front of another tiny body, he roared furiously. Without any hesitation, he gave Jingza a death order. Wang Nuan was too strong. The most logical course of action was to kill her before she fully matured. As he spoke, Jingza attacked again. The arrow in his hand turned into an astonishing electric dragon with a radius as large as a small mountain as it swiftly flew toward Wang Nuan. However, all their attention was focused on Wang Nuan, and they ignored the little green grass that had arrived at the same time as her. Leng Ming had become stronger and his body had become sturdier as he continued to cultivate in the Sword King world. He leaped through the air like a fairy, fearless in the face of Jingza. A little grass could cut down the sun, the moon, and the stars, and Leng Ming could do it now. What was even more surprising to Jingza was that this powerful little grass. Leng Ming was naturally unafraid of lightning. He charged directly at the lightning dragon. The emerald green sword light burst forth from below, like an Arctic meteor transforming into a huge grass dragon, colliding with the lightning dragon. Then, the lightning dragon and the arrow were completely swallowed up. Leng Ming's strength had once again exceeded the scope of Jingza's understanding. He had seen this blade of grass before, but it was far from being as difficult to deal with as it was now. Coupled with Leng Ming's natural restraining ability, Jingza was at a loss for a moment. He knew that the 5 elements restrained each other, so he tried to use thunder and lightning to detonate the divine fire to burn Leng Ming. Unexpectedly, Leng Ming was not even afraid of fire. Instead, Leng Ming, who was covered in flames, erupted with an even stronger combat power. Using strange arcs in the void, He continuously displayed his exquisite movement technique. Finally, the heavenly fire descended. From the horizon, it turned into a rain of fire and rained down. Seeing the divine fire descend, Jing Zhe finally panicked. He originally thought that according to the 5 elements restrained each other, Leng Ming would be extremely afraid of fire. However, he did not expect that this blade of grass would actually overcome this weakness and turn the divine fire burning on his body into his own. He gritted his teeth and was forced to change the bow and arrow in his hand back into the form of the black umbrella to block the divine fire shower in front of him. There was a time limit for the black umbrella's transformation, and there was a period of time between each transformation. This also meant that Jing Zhe would not be able to use that troublesome bow and arrow for a period of time. Having achieved his goal, Leng Ming landed on the ground and took root. He calmly watched as the divine fire burned his body to ashes. Was he committing suicide? No. In the distance, Jing Zhe narrowed his eyes. He realized that the land where Leng Ming was had been burned bare. However, at this moment, a gust of wind blew past, and the emerald green grass on the ground emerged once again. This was the spring wind brings life again spell, a consummate skill that Leng Ming had comprehended from the Sword King world. As long as there was land, he didn't fear any fire. Fire indeed restrained him, including the piercing pain when the divine fire had burned him just now. However, he had now cultivated to a level where he could face it calmly. At that moment, Jing Zhe felt a little overwhelmed. He couldn't even break through a sword spirit, let alone deal with the baby behind him. With Leng Ming's help, Wang Nuan had already taken care of Wang Muyu's injuries. It was only then that Wang Muyu realized to his shock that his Auntie Nuan's diapers weren't ordinary diapers. They were simply a mobile magic treasure trove that could be used in anything. She took out all kinds of bottles and jars of medicine, and without saying a word, she directly opened the caps and poured them into Wang Muyu's mouth. These bottles and jars were all elixirs that he had refined in his spare time. Almost all of them were crispy noodle snacks, and when Wang Muyu ate them, he felt a sense of familiarity. As a descendant of the 10,000 dragons, Wang Muyu's greatest advantage was that he had a strong physique and wouldn't die no matter how many supplements he took. Given this situation, Wang Nuan didn't care about the effects at all, and directly sat on Wang Muyu's body and fed him bottle after bottle. This could definitely be called the most powerful feeding in history. After all, Wang Ling had refined these elixirs, and their effects alone were several times stronger than those of ordinary elixirs. Thus, when the effects of these supplements collided in Wang Muyu's body, he felt as if a grand fireworks party was going on inside him, and countless fireworks started to collide inside him. Not only had Jing Zhe's arrow wound healed at a speed visible to the naked eye, Wang Muyu had even vaguely sensed that he was about to break through. After pouring out the last bottle of pills, Wang Nuan thought that she had completed the first step of her work. She turned and flew down from Wang Muyu's body. She stood upright and floated in the void, staring at the cleansing lake in the void. This was the gaze of the master of Shadow Dao, and it made Jing Zhe's hair stand on end. At that moment, Wang Nuan had already decided to do it herself. With a wave of her hand, she summoned Leng Ming to her side, then climbed onto Leng Ming's sturdy shoulder and directly commanded her sword spirit as a mount. Leng Ming's little face was full of care and love. He completely obeyed Wang Nuan's instructions and gave her complete command. This was also a disguised form of becoming one with the sword, which gave Jing Zhe an ominous feeling. Boom! In the next moment, Wang Nuan made her move. Riding on Leng Ming's shoulder, the two figures arrived almost instantaneously, so fast that Jing Zhe couldn't react. A small palm slapped forward and landed precisely on the right side of Jing Zhe's face, instantly cracking his teeth. Chapter 1898. It was hard to imagine that a palm the size of a baby's, which looked as soft as cotton, could actually slap someone mercilessly. This small slap pushed Jing Zhe back 100 li in the inner world, and he slid on the ground face first, directly plowing out an abyss. It was just a simple slap, but Jing Zhe was already dizzy from the slap, and a trace of fear finally appeared on his expressionless face. It was a fear that came from the depths of his soul. Because this slap was all too familiar to him, it was like a memory that had been engraved in his bones since the last time he had been slapped, and he couldn't forget it. When he got up from the bottom of the abyss, Jing Zhe had already tried very hard to convince himself that the other party was just a little baby who didn't need to fear him at all, but his body still couldn't stop trembling. Thus, Jing Zhe abruptly erupted. He circulated all his spirit energy and spread his dragon wings wide open, and the sparkling and translucent dragon bones shone with a rich luster under the swirling lightning. Wang Nuan was well aware that this was fear. Although she wasn't very old, she was still sensitive to emotions. Everyone faced fear in different ways. Jing Zhe's apparent outburst was in fact a cover-up. Roaring, he charged to the front and scattered lightning to every corner of the inner world. As he roared, Thunder God whips broke out of the ground one after another. Tens of thousands of Thunder God whips broke out of the ground, and like tentacles, they swayed back and forth in the inner world. The power of the old world? Leng Ming frowned. His Shifus had warned him before that he had to be on guard against the revival of the old world. This was also the focus of Jinka and Bai Qiao's training for Leng Ming. As the future successor of Sword King World, Leng Ming had studied very seriously at the time, and had a certain level of understanding of the old world. It was a mysterious and terrifying history that symbolized darkness and devouring. No one hoped that the power of the old world would resurface in an era of peace. It wasn't just the modern cultivation world, even Sword King World and other worlds had to be on guard against the emergence of this power. And the biggest symbol of the old world was those mysterious tentacles. Wang Nuan had eaten a few of them before, and they hadn't tasted good. Fortunately, they had done their homework in advance, and neither Leng Ming nor Wang Nuan was afraid at all. They had thought that Jing Zhe would come up with something more interesting after his outburst, but in the end, it was only at this level, which disappointed Wang Nuan. As the younger sister, she wanted to surpass her brother, but her brother was really too strong. Who knew how long it would take for him to surpass Wang Ling based on his talent alone? The point was that while she was growing, her brother would also grow. If both of them grew, how long would it take for them to catch up? Therefore, Wang Nuan's goal was very clear. Although she had only been born a few months ago, her small body already had great ambitions. She had thought it through very thoroughly. The only way to surpass her brother was to constantly fight and temper herself in battle. Who would have thought that at the critical moment, Wang Ling would have to resort to such a lousy method? It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was a small fry. If one looked down on Wang Nuan just by looking at her, and felt that as long as they could defeat her with a strange spell that surpassed her age, they would be underestimating the youngest of the Wang family. As the master of Shadow Dao, wherever there was light, there would be shadows, and using shadows to counter attacks was what Wang Nuan was best at. The lightning that Jing Zhe had released actually created an excellent environment for Wang Nuan. Unhurriedly, she sat on Leng Ming's neck and began to circulate all the spirit energy in her body. Boom! On the surface of the core world, countless pitch-black tentacles reached out from underground. These were all shadows that Wang Nuan had replicated. Their might was equivalent to these lightning whips, and the moment they appeared, they formed an equal suppression against the tentacles that Jing Zhe had summoned. Then, taking advantage of this counterbalance, Wang Nuan extended her tentacles again. Ha! But this time, it was Wang Nuan's little foot that touched Jing Zhe's face. The instant this little flying leg kicked toward Jing Zhe, the huge force it formed exploded on Jing Zhe's face, distorting the void and completely tearing it apart. The seemingly ordinary flying leg was actually too powerful. In that instant, Jing Zhe felt as if his face had been swept by a huge mountain, and he was immediately sent flying. He spat out a large mouthful of blood, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. So powerful, even Leng Ming was dumbfounded. Although he knew that Wang Nuan was very powerful, he didn't expect her to be so ferocious and domineering. For a moment, as Wang Nuan's sword spirit, Leng Ming felt a lot of pressure. Before he knew it, he had already been swept away. In order to become a sword spirit that was worthy of Wang Nuan, Leng Ming felt that he had to work harder. Cough! Jing Zhe crawled up from the ground for the second time. This was already the second time that he had been attacked in the face. His body was covered in blood, and he looked to be in a very bad condition. The dragon wings on his back had already been fractured, and even a few dragon scales had been shaved off by Wang Nuan. He kept coughing up blood, but his expression still showed no signs of admitting defeat. On the other side, Wang Nuan had no intention of letting Jing Zhe go. After all, Wang Muyu was injured. Although she had fed him a lot of tonics, Wang Nuan felt that it was not enough to vent her anger just by hitting him twice. Therefore, after hitting Jing Zhe twice, she was actually waiting for Jing Zhe's injuries to recover. After all, Jing Zhe's injuries could be quickly healed with the eternal moon starlight that Baizhi had given him. To Wang Nuan, this was excellent news. Because Jing Zhe's rapid recovery meant two things. One was that he could let her fight to her heart's content. On the other hand, it was a very special way to gain combat experience. Although Jing Zhe wasn't very strong, he had a lot of health. Although his strength was too weak, as long as his body was sturdy enough, he could barely make it as an opponent. Therefore, Wang Nuan calculated that Jing Zhe had more or less recovered, and attacked again. The boundless spiritual energy in her body exploded at this moment, turning into endless lightning. This was a technique that she had learned from Jing Zhe using her Shadow Dao ability. This was truly giving him a taste of his own medicine. Lightning is useless against me. Jing Zhe laughed. He was mocking Wang Nuan for actually trying to use lightning against him. However, very quickly he was slapped in the face by Wang Nuan again. This was because in the next second, the head hammer that contained the power of lightning smashed onto his body again. Moreover, it was aimed at his vitals. He was hit accurately on the spot. In that instant, Jing Zhe felt as if his body had been struck by lightning. He instantly let out a painful scream. Chapter 1899. This precise blow made Jing Zhe feel as if his lower limbs were cracking, as if the sky was falling down. He had never thought that he would be beaten so badly by a baby. Boom! Endless black Great Dao runes of the Master of Shadow Dao appeared on Wang Nuan's body. As the creator of this Dao, her small body exuded boundless godly might, like a god of war. Without using any other spells at all, the pure physical strength of the Master of Shadow Dao's Great Dao overlaid on top of Jing Zhe's body was enough to overwhelm this dragon descendant. Bang! Bang! There were two loud bangs as Wang Nuan kicked him away. The instant he was sent flying, she moved again. Carrying her, Lung Ming's speed was unbelievably fast. When Jing Zhe moved to the next coordinate, Lung Ming and the little girl accurately predicted Jing Zhe's landing point and arrived ahead of time. Then, they kicked Jing Zhe's spine hard. Baizhi couldn't believe his eyes. Wang Nuan's growth rate was too terrifying. In some sense, she might be even more amazing than when he had been born. How could a little girl be so strong? He didn't dare believe it. Wang Nuan's kick could be said to be merciless. She directly broke Jing Zhe's spine. Everyone present could clearly hear the sound of Jing Zhe's spine breaking. His entire body was sent flying, and he was covered in blood. "Ya," Wang Nuan said. Lung Ming, who had his own simultaneous interpreter, translated on the side. "My sword master said that you're too weak, and a dragon descendant at that. Furthermore, it was a dragon descendant. This was too embarrassing. Also, you'll find that the eternal moon starlight on you doesn't work, because my sword master used his Shadow Dao ability to cover it up." Cough. Jing Zhe coughed up blood on the ground. He had already put on a mask of pain, and his face was twisted. He really couldn't understand how the word "ya" could translate so many things. "Ya." At that moment, Wang Nuan gave another order. Lung Ming understood, and without another word, he stepped on Jing Zhe's broken spine. "Behave, my sword master wants to borrow something from you." After saying that, he directly reached his hand in. The moment his fingertips fell, they turned into soft grass, and then directly cut open Jing Zhe's back along his spine. Lung Ming skillfully took out a jade bottle and gathered as much of Jing Zhe's dragon's pine blood into it. This time, Wang Nuan did not bring her original mount, SCB-096. When the little girl thought that her lovely rabbit was still waiting at home, she suddenly had an idea. Jingza was a little weak, but the dragon's pine blood was a good supplement. It was perfect as a midnight snack. Furthermore, SCP-096 still had a lot of room for growth. It still needed time to develop, and dragon's pine blood was the perfect supplement. The corners of Jingza's mouth twitched. He lay on the ground with a pained expression, unable to move, allowing Wang Nuan and Leng Ming to do whatever they wanted to him. As the descendant of a dragon, he had suffered such humiliation twice for no reason. He had been taught a lesson by Wang Ling last time. And this time, he was taught a lesson by Wang Nuan. This pair of siblings from the Wang clan was too frightening. Jingzai realized that he couldn't afford to offend them. "Girl, you're having fun beating me up, but have you ever thought that your house would be on fire?" At that moment, Jingzai sneered. He knew that he couldn't die. Even if he failed in this mission and failed to bring Wang Muyu back, luring Wang Ling away and taking Wang Muyu away was only the second step in the whole plan. If they went further in, they had in fact arranged for another group of people to be sent directly to the Wang family's small villa. The purpose was none other than to assassinate the Wang family. Whether it was Father Wang or Mother Wang, they had already been included in Baiji's purge list. The grave god had failed in his attack on the Wang family last time, but Baizhi felt that he had a good chance of succeeding this time without Wang Ling around. Most importantly, this strongest little girl was also in the core world now. With Jingza and him keeping an eye on her from behind, Baizhi felt that there was a good chance that little girl Nuan would succeed this time. Elsewhere, in the Wang family's small villa, there was actually an anxious atmosphere. Their daughter and son weren't around, and although Father and Mother Wang didn't show it on the surface, they were in fact very worried. It wasn't that they were worried about Wang Nuan's strength, but that they were worried about everything else. After all, little girl Nuan had only been born a few months ago, and she had actually been sent to maintain peace on Earth. Even Father Wang felt that he couldn't write such a melodramatic plot. Thus, the current situation was that old Wang and his wife were waiting at home. Without anyone at home, they couldn't even eat to their heart's content. Father Wang had no appetite for food and could only sit in front of the computer and smoke. His fingers clutched the keyboard as he pondered for a long time, but couldn't write a single word. "Looks like I can only use the manuscript library." Father Wang cupped his chin as he pondered. He was so agitated that he couldn't calm down even after smoking several cigarettes in a row. Looking at the SQQ profile picture that kept jumping around, Father Wang finally steeled his heart and clicked on it, then directly sent the document to the using an offline file. "Don't rush me. I've delivered the goods. I don't even have my underwear," Father Wang typed. On the other side of the computer screen, the Lai Mengmeng was a little confused. "What? Did you give me the entire manuscript repository?" Father Wang was extremely agitated. "That's right. Are you satisfied now?" Lai Mengmeng was blank. He could see that Father Wang seemed to be in a bad mood, so he said weakly, "Sorry. I don't think I've received it yet," Father Wang replied straight away. "Word is very big, bear with it." Lai Mengmeng, dumbfounded, he waited for the offline file to be transferred over as he wondered what on earth had happened to Father Wang. At the same time, he was also thinking about the situation of online literature writers nowadays, and wondering if he had been pressuring them to update too much. After all, at the very beginning, online literature writers had been updating weekly, then came the era of 2,000 daily updates, which slowly developed into 4,000, 6,000, 8,000, and now the most outrageous era of 20,000 and more. Indeed, it's too much. Lai Mengmeng sighed. He felt that he should be concerned about the health of his writers, and planned to find time to go to the Wang family's small villa to see how Father Wang was doing. At the same time, Father Wang was already fully armed. He was extremely worried about Wang Nuan's safety, so he and Mother Wang put on the latest enchanted long johns that Wang Ling had left behind. They called over some of the family's powerful enchanted gremlins and had them turn into human forms. The whole group was ready to set off from the villa with a bang. At that moment, a cute and mischievous little girl appeared at the entrance of the Wang family's small villa. She had a popsicle in her mouth and looked as cute as a doll. "Protect my lord." Lord Ma immediately realized that something wasn't right and shielded Father and Mother Wang behind him. He could sense that the girl in front of him was also a descendant of the dragon race. And her rank wasn't low. Chapter 1900. Thinking about it carefully, Father Wang suddenly realized that this seemed to be the second time someone had directly come looking for trouble with him and Mother Wang. AI, who had they offended? Didn't they just give birth to 2 nuclear bombs? Did they have to be targeted like this? Father Wang sighed endlessly in his heart. He vaguely recalled the last time Wang Yuan had been born, when the 1% of the grave gods had come looking for trouble with him. At the time, Immortal Toya had been present to help deliver Wang Yuan. In the end, because Wang Ling had enlightened him with his Qilin arm, the 1% of the grave gods had been directly suppressed. Little Kato? Little Eagle? Are you there? Father Wang called out in his heart. Because his left and right hands had been enlightened before, Father Wang had been a little out of his mind for a while, and Mother Wang had straightaway taught him a lesson, which had also resulted in his left and right hands being sealed. Now that they were in danger again, Father Wang didn't know if his call could wake them up again. After calling out twice and realizing that there was no response in his mind, he couldn't help feeling a little disappointed and nervous. There were many gremlins enlightened by Wang Ling in the Wang family's small villa, and with Lord Ma at the helm, there shouldn't be any problems with their safety. But now, without the help of his left and right hands, Father Wang still felt that the current situation was very unpredictable. At the same time, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was also paying attention to the old Wang family's plight. Crispy Noodles was keeping an eye on Wang Ling's situation, and Wang Yuan and Leng Ming were there for Wang Muyu's situation. In this situation, the old Wang family might also be targeted. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt that given the strength of these 2 old seniors of the Wang family, no evil demon would be able to leap over the old Wang family's lightning pool. But as the head of a sect, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal still wanted to take a look. On one hand, he wanted to see if there was anything he could do to help, and on the other hand, he felt that this was a very rare opportunity to learn from them at close range. He had already carried out many missions with Wang Ling before, and each time, he could feel that he was a little closer to achieving Great Tao. This time, the opportunity to watch the battle at close range had been provided by the 2 experienced seniors of the old Wang family, so the learning effect was naturally extraordinary. Furthermore, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was very considerate in setting up a temporary lockdown in the name of Battle Sect to ensure that Father Wang and Mother Wang's fight wouldn't be watched by ordinary cultivators. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was well aware that the old Wang family had always kept a low profile. Sect Master, the surroundings have been sealed. Our battle sect has sent a total of 300 gold core cultivators under the command of 20 nascent soul outer sect elders and 5 deity transformation stage peak elders to completely seal off the wasteland. They're using the name of the sect's maneuver, but they've only applied for 10 hours. After 10 hours, we'll have to leave, Klein said from the side. As the chief commander of the United Front Department, he could be considered one of the few foreign talents in battle sect working in Huaxiao Nation. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt that he was a very capable and trustworthy person. It won't take that long. That's enough. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded in satisfaction, then said, "Withdraw first, Kun. Leave the rest to me." "That girl isn't simple. Sectmaster, be careful." Kun nodded, then swiftly retreated on his spirit sword. According to their previous plan, after sealing off the area, they would directly retreat 150 li away and set up a barrier 300 li away. But as the leader of the dragon bloodline, it was naturally impossible for Yen Fu, who was naturally the leader of the dragon bloodline, to not sense this. She licked her popsicle with a smile on her face. "Are these small fries around you also your people?" Father Wang knew that Yen Fu was probably talking about people from Battle Sect. Although Father Wang was very weak, grenade throwing had been a guest at old Wang's house time and time again, so Father Wang could still sense his aura. But because their opponent was a dragon bloodline, Father Wang didn't place all his hopes on grenade throwing Senior Immortal. However, he could still guess grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's purpose for this trip. One was to protect him, and the other was to learn. Apart from these two reasons, he couldn't think of any other reason. But the problem was that he really didn't have anything to learn. Father Wang's heart was on the verge of collapse. He didn't know when grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and some other people in the cultivation world had started to regard him as a big shot. He was clearly just a very ordinary body refinement cultivator. "You little doll, your tone is very arrogant. With me here, you won't be able to touch a hair on my old master's head." At this critical moment, Lord Ma took the initiative to step forward. He still had that old-fashioned look on his face, and the curled mustache at the corner of his lips gave people a feeling of power without being angry. His pure white Taoist robe made him look especially sage-like in such a tense situation. Of course, the most impressive thing about him was the wood grain waistcoat on his neck. It was a gift from the cosmic god tree himself after he had fallen in love with it, and it gave off the scent of wood. Without saying anything else, Yen Fu made her move the moment she finished eating the popsicle in her hand. The shadow of a fire dragon surged behind her. Lord Ma and the goblins who had been enlightened by the Wang family were waiting solemnly. Lord Ma and Bed Immortal, the two most senior goblins of the Wang family, each carried Father Wang and Mother Wang on their shoulders. The ground in front of the Wang family's villa instantly exploded as their feet left the ground. It shattered with a rumble and turned into a roiling lake of fire from which lava surged and gave off astonishing energy. The surrounding ground had all collapsed, leaving only the Wang family's small villa alone in this area, like an isolated island. Wang Ling had enlightened the entire villa, so Father and Mother Wang weren't worried about any property damage at all. They were just a little astonished by Yen Fu's ability. She looked like a very young girl, but her attacks were so decisive and ruthless that she directly disintegrated the ground under her feet. What an astonishing aura! Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned. Actually, he had a third reason for coming here this time, which was to collect accurate data on the dragon descendants at close range. Although Earth had already been upgraded and the realms above True Immortal had been liberated, the speed at which the dragon descendants were regenerating was too fast. If they didn't have a good countermeasure, apart from those hidden immemorial beings, few cultivators on Earth would be able to compete with these dragon descendants who had the advantage of bloodlines. It was obvious that Lord Ma had never expected Yen Fu to be so troublesome. He wanted to get serious, but it was a little inconvenient with Father Wang sitting on his shoulder. "Old Master, it doesn't seem convenient for me to fight with you on my back. Do you want to enter my body?" "No!" Father Wang refused straight away and confidently. "AI." Lord Ma sighed, a little disappointed on his face. He had clearly already cleaned up his internal environment. Because of the cosmic god tree, the reserves in his body had long since been emptied out as fertilizer. Right now, his body was very clean. But his old master was too willful. He couldn't get over this psychological obstacle, which gave him a headache. Chapter 1901. Lord Ma knew better than anyone that his body was now very clean. Since falling in love with the cosmic god tree, he had gained a girlfriend who liked to clean, and he looked a lot younger. He was already the oldest gremlin in Old Wang's family, and Little Sheep had always called him Uncle with white hair and a ruddy complexion, which touched Lord Ma very much. At that moment, as one of the few furniture gremlins in Old Wang's family who had been strengthened by version 3.0's enchantment spell, Lord Ma abruptly changed into a very coquettish Western-style tuxedo the next second to highlight his status as an elder in the world of enchanted gremlins. "Bed Immortal, I'll leave Old Master to you. I'll go beat this girl back." As Lord Ma said this, he directly teleported Father Wang to Bed Immortal, who was carrying Father Wang and Mother Wang on each shoulder and was very steady. He and Lord Ma were old partners. In this situation, there was no need for them to say much. Just a look was enough for them to work together tacitly. What a joke! Do you think a gremlin you created with magic can contend with us, the descendants of dragons? Yen Ruo giggled. She found it inconceivable that an enchanted piece of furniture could actually speak so confidently and want to fend off a descendant of dragons with noble blood. Arrogant girl, so what if you're a descendant of dragons? My master has never cared about trash like you. Putting his hands behind his back, Lord Ma looked disdainfully at her, the tail of his Western-style tuxedo fluttering in the windless air. Yen Ruo couldn't take it anymore to be looked down upon by an enchanted toilet. In any case, she was a descendant of dragons and didn't approve of this kind of matchup. To actually let a toilet be her opponent, this was looking down on the dragon clan too much. You're courting death. Yen Ruo instantly flew into a rage and spat out dragon flames. This was the divine fire of the dragon clan, which alternated between purple and black, and had a frightening temperature. The moment it was spat out, the flaming lake below immediately resonated, and several fire dragons soared into the sky from the lake to form a pincer attack on Lord Ma. Lord Ma's face was as calm as an ancient well, but he was secretly astonished at Yen Ruo's methods. She clearly looked like a very gentle and quiet girl, but her moves were all large-scale destructive attacks. Although he was the most experienced gremlin in the Wang family, Lord Ma still knew nothing about the grand occasion of the Dragon Clan. This battle was also a lesson for Lord Ma himself. However, Lord Ma didn't panic in the slightest. He quickly dodged. Although the formation of the fire dragon was sudden, it still gave Lord Ma some time to react. The rest of the Wang family's spiritual monsters hid in the house and watched. With the entire villa surrounded by the flaming lake, the temperature in the house rose by a lot. The spiritual monsters looked at the doomsday-like scene outside through the window, and all of them felt a lingering fear. The dragon race was truly too frightening. There were not many enlightened monsters in the Wang family who could fight against a dragon descendant of this level. If it were them, they would probably be burned to ashes immediately after coming into contact with the dragon race's divine fire. Just like Jing Zhe, Yen Ruo had also grown over the past few days, becoming more ferocious than before. As Lord Ma fought, he also felt that it was a pity. If such a powerful ability could be used to benefit the human cultivation world, it would be a wonderful way of symbiosis. He didn't understand why the dragon race had to pursue the mission of restoring the glory of the past. Since they could come back to life from their hearts, it was not impossible to walk a path of peaceful coexistence and symbiosis. With a bang, Lord Ma dodged sideways to avoid a mountain-sized fire. Yen Ruo's spiritual power seemed to be endless, and she didn't care about the problem of consumption when casting spells. She sprinkled her dragon breath and spiritual power in large amounts, burning the ground in front of her into a fiery red. The nearby ground was all cracked and shattered on the spot, forming a dry abyss. Do you only know how to hide? Toilet bowl. Yen Ruo taunted. She didn't regard Lord Ma as her opponent at all, and was just releasing her temper willfully. When Lord Ma heard this, his face suddenly became serious. He felt that this little dragon girl really needed to be disciplined. As the head of the goblins enlightened by the Wang family, he had always considered himself to be elegant and easygoing. When he had dodged these attacks earlier, he had planned to use verbal admonition to make Yen Ruo surrender. But as it turned out, Lord Ma felt that he had been thinking too much. Sure enough, verbal evasion didn't work for everyone. As the head of the family, he now had to teach Yen Ruo a lesson. Whoosh! At that moment, Yen Ruo spat out the dragon god fire again, and her pink skirt glowed under the resonance power of her dragonkin bloodline. She intensified the power of the dragon god fire again, and this time, it directly hit Lord Ma head-on and completely engulfed him. This time, Lord Ma didn't choose to dodge, but directly opened his mouth to take Yen Ruo's dragon god fire, and with a terrifying devouring power, he formed a wonderful cave inside his body to continuously suck in the dragon god fire. Everyone was shocked. He had taken on the dragon god fire head-on. Furthermore, he was even devouring the dragon god fire. This was simply heaven-defying. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was horrified when he saw this from a distance. He knew of Lord Ma's background, but he had never thought that he would actually be so strong. No wonder old Senior Wang hadn't made a move. It turned out that he had already anticipated Lord Ma's strength. Could Lord Ma alone resist it? As expected of old Senior Wang, grenade throwing Senior Immortal sighed in his heart at Father Wang and Mother Wang's formidable strength. It seemed that the dragonkin wasn't strong enough for them to make a move. Although it was very strong, the goblins enlightened by the old Wang family were already enough to deal with it. I don't believe you can keep swallowing. Like Jingzi Yenrua had a kind of magical arrogance. She looked down on Lord Ma to begin with, and it was even harder for her to accept the fact that her dragon god fire was ineffective. In the next moment, she increased the intensity of the flames and tried to use the dragon god fire to blow up Lord Ma's internal space. But what Yenrua herself hadn't expected was that when she activated the dragon god fire, Lord Ma's body instead underwent a new change. Lord Ma's black swallow-tailed coat was visibly changing as the divine fire of the dragon clan continued to devour it. Not only that, but even the color of his eyes and hair had changed. His black tuxedo turned a gradual black-gold color, and his hair and curly goatee turned pure gold. Furthermore, Lord Ma's aura was even stronger than before. As he continued to absorb the dragon god fire, he became stronger than before. Uncle Ma's aura seems to have increased. I know. This is fourth gear. Fourth gear. The enlightened goblins discussed among themselves. Oh, it's version 4.0 of the enlightened spell. It needs a special mechanism to trigger the upgrade. Little Sheep said softly, now, Uncle Ma is already a version 4.0 enlightened goblin. At the same time, Father and Mother Wang heard Sheep's voice. Realization dawned on them, and they were speechless. Who could have thought? Lord Ma had actually evolved into a quench toilet bowl while fighting the dragonkin. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.